then they put the cups in, they dilated me. I couldn't freaking see.
You should do that.
Wow.
I went home.
That's right.
But I was gonna come.
Copied it to the page.
You know what she said?
Oh, yeah.
She thinks it is. I have, ocular migraine.
Good, eh? Wow.
And you get these migraines
Oh,
in
yeah.
your
Wow.
It's 15, 20, 30 minutes, no pain or nothing, but really weird, really weird.
Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this committee of the whole meeting to order. Moved by Councillor Durley that the agenda for the December 12th, 2016 special meeting of committee of the whole be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Excuse me. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no disclosures of pecuniary interest, thank you. We now move to the planning portion of the evening. And this is to review the plan of subdivision Summerside Boulevard. And I have some notice requirements that I should read. The Planning Act requires under section 5120, the council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect to the proposed draft plan of subdivision. This public meeting has been called to satisfy these requirements. Notice of this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on November 17th, 2016. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed draft plan of subdivision. In addition to providing information, we'll also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. There is an attendance list on the table. It's here over on the side, or it's on the table over here. Thank you. We would ask all present to print their name and complete the mailing address if they wish to be notified of the passage of an amendment by council should this occur. If an applicant, person, or public body decides to file an appeal of a decision made by council in respect to the draft plan of subdivision and does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the town of Pelham before the proposed amendment and draft plan are adopted or refused, the Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of the appeal. In closing, on behalf of council, we stress at this point no decision has been made on the proposed draft plan of subdivision, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. We will have a presentation by planning staff. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Tonight I'll be presenting the public meeting for Summersides Boulevard, draft plan of subdivision, application number 26T1901016. The purpose of the subdivision is to allow for the development of one municipal roadway that will be called Summersides Boulevard and 2 blocks for 0.3 meters reserves. It is located south of Highway 20 East and east of the intersection of Pelham Town Square and Station Street. The plan that is on the screen now is the plan for the proposed draft plan of subdivision. It totals approximately 3.68 acres, and the land was assembled by the town for the purposes of constructing a municipal roadway. It will result in the extension of Summersides Boulevard from Station Street to Rice Road, and will incorporate in it land that has previously been dedicated to the town through the land granted by the Village of East Vaughan Hill and the River Estates subdivision. In regard to provincial policies, the land is located within a settlement area. The Greenbelt Plan and Niagara Escarpment Plan do not apply, as the land is located outside of those plan areas, and it is within a designated greenfield area and within the built boundary for the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Provincial plans all stress the importance of the coordination of infrastructure and also transportation for safe, effective transport of people and goods, and for the promotion of active transportation. The regional official plan designates the land as designated greenfield area and built up area. The region, similar to the provincial plans, supports opportunities for transportation corridors that meet current and projected needs for various modes of travel, including active transportation. The town's official plan designates the land with several classifications: downtown transitional area, potential intensification area, urban living area, built boundary, greenfield overlay, secondary plan area, East Fawn Hill, and lands within built boundary. The abutting lands shown adjacent to the roadway in the image on the screen include East Fawn Hill medium-density residential and public parkland. And throughout the entire site, there is the presence of a highly vulnerable aquifer. The development of Summersides Boulevard will support development in this area and the development on the adjacent lands of medium-density residential and public parkland. The town's transportation policies in our official plan indicate that the town supports the facilitation of movement of people and goods. The town wishes to ensure new development does not create traffic hazards and supports the variety of transportation modes. The town zoning bylaw indicates that the land is currently zoned agricultural and residential 2. It is noted by planning staff that there is no plan to currently rezone the lands, and any land that is adjacent to the proposed municipal roadway would be rezoned as part of subsequent plan of subdivision or condominium applications. In regards to agency and public comments, there were no objections from Niagara Region. Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has no concerns, and they will not be providing comments on this file. The Niagara Peninsula Energy, Inc. Has requested the right to service this area. Enbridge provides no objection, and they provide their standard draft plan conditions. And the town's Department of Public Works, Fire and Bylaw Services, and Building Departments offer no objection. In regards to public notice, one comment was provided by Fred Sacco on behalf of 1931056 Ontario Limited, and they agree with the draft plan of subdivision. They just wish to be notified of any decisions or changes made. This presentation has provided information on the draft plan of subdivision to allow for 1 municipal roadway, as well as 2 blocks for 0.3 meter reserves. As indicated by the mayor, no recommendations or decisions concerning this application have been or will be made at this meeting. Following my presentation, there is a brief presentation that will be made by Upper Canada Consultants in regards to the Rice Road improvements that were provided as part of the notice that was sent to the members of the public and is a requirement of the PIC for the Rice Road project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Members of council have any questions? Councilor Powell?
Just very quickly through you, Mr. Mayor. It says Niagara Peninsula Energy wants to service it. Is this one of the Hydro One areas, or is it within the jurisdiction of Niagara Peninsula Energy?
They indicated in their comments that they want to reserve the right to service it.
They want to?
Reserve the right to be able to service the property. I'm not familiar with their exact.
So for further clarity, the Niagara Peninsula Energy would go to where the former Village of Fawn Hill boundary was, which is, I guess, before the expansion of the East Fawn Hill area. So it's that area along Station Street.
So it's not part of Hydro One surface area?
The part sort of behind Sobeys is serviced by Niagara Peninsula Energy,
Right.
but everything east of that isn't, roughly.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
anything further on that, Ms. Weems?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. So essentially, Station Street is the boundary, so those houses that front and face onto Station Street are serviced by Niagara Peninsula Energy. So the frontage of this piece is, and then further beyond it is Hydro One.
Thank you.
Okay.
Others? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this is for purposes of clarification only. Could we see the slide headed Regional Official Plan, please? Yeah, I don't understand the reference to St. Catharines.
No.
The red area is identified as downtown St. Catharines Urban Growth Center? Is that meant to be
No,
East Fawn Hill?
sorry, that's just a square that to identify the subject area and to make it identifiable on the purple. So it's not the St. Catherine's Urban Growth Center.
Sorry, I still don't
So
understand.
the map that's, let me describe it this way perhaps.
Okay.
The map that's there is a section, an inset or pullout of another larger map.
Right.
The Greenbelt map, and which includes a spot on it in St. Catharines, but this, so maybe change the color to green or something.
It's the Fonthill boundary.
So they happen to use by coincidence red, they shouldn't have, they'll maybe change it to green.
I see. So,
And red is something else, the plan, it's a big plan.
I got
And
it.
they just took a little section.
I got it. And if you
But
saw the
thank you
whole
for
thing, there
clarifying.
would be a red portion
Right,
somewhere
there's a
else.
red
Got
dot
it.
right in
I got it.
downtown St.
It's
Catharines.
like a pinky red.
Anyone else? Questions of clarity? Just a quick question. Highly vulnerable aquifer, we keep hearing that, not only in this application, but in others.
Yeah.
Isn't like the whole town a highly vulnerable aquifer, as it's called?
Predominantly, you are correct, predominantly, the whole urban area is within the highly vulnerable aquifer area. So the policies get referenced to provide that information. And then in the recommendation report, planning staff will provide comments on the impact or potential impact for any development on the highly vulnerable aquifer.
Okay, so it's sort of, it just ensures that we consider that as we move forward. Okay, but it is, it'd be interesting to see the map of how much of the town is covered by that.
It is in one of the schedules,
Yeah,
if you wish to view it.
okay, thank you. Anything else for questions of clarity? Okay, thank you. You said there's another presentation now?
Yes, Albert Canada
Okay,
will be presenting.
okay. Well, let's hear it. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Hammer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first off, I'd like to express my regret on behalf of Mr. Cam Milne, the project manager from the Region of Niagara. He's unfortunately unable to join us tonight. My name is Adam Keene. I'm the engineering manager at Upper Canada Consultants. We're the consultants for the Region of Niagara on the Regional Road 54, the Rice Road reconstruction project. The works on that project, the limits are Regional Road 20, south to approximately 200 meters north of Merritt Road. And this project has been tied in and is being undertaken as part of this draft plan of subdivision for Summersides Boulevard. So this approach is consistent with the municipal class environmental assessment coordination process for a Planning Act application, which changes that project to a Schedule A project, which is considered a pre-approved. So this is basically akin to normal repair or maintenance activities on urban infrastructure, which are not subject to a Part 2 appeal order, which would be typical for a Schedule B or C environmental approval process. Instead, the approval is being tied to tonight's draft plan of subdivision that we're discussing, and it will be subject to all the appeal mechanisms and restrictions placed on it under the Planning Act. So that would be the OMB and specific oral or written submissions, as you referred to earlier. So just a brief outline of the works that the region intends to complete on Rice Road. There are drainage improvements, including storm sewers and culvert replacements. There is curb and gutter proposed for the west side, which is adjacent to the development lands. Open ditches are proposed to remain on the east side, with the exception of the intersection of Port Robinson Road. There's some curbing proposed there. There is a right turn proposed at Highway 20 and some modifications to the existing signals. There are dedicated left turn lanes at Summersides and Shaw Boulevards, which are part of the Village of East Fonthill development sites. There are new traffic signals at Port Robinson Road, and there are turn lanes at all 4 legs. There is a left turn lane at the major intersection for the Saffron Meadows draft plan, which I believe was approved last month. That's south of Port Robinson Road on the west side of Rice. There are provisions for bike lanes and sidewalks within the town's adjacent multi-use path. So there are no proposed bike lanes or sidewalks proposed on Rice Road. As everyone can see out there, there are some utility relocates as part of this work, and street lighting is intended to be provided. The region's corridor safety staff are in support of a reduction of the posted speed limit to 50 kilometers an hour, and that, however, will require regional council approval. No guide rails will be required if the posted speed is reduced. Otherwise, guide rails would be required on the west side, which is the development side. And I guess the last and, well, almost the last point is construction's intended to occur in 2 phases. The first phase would be during the 2017 construction season, and that would be Region Road 20 south to basically the limits of the turn lanes and the intersection works at Port Robinson Road. And then the balance of the construction down to just north of Merritt Road would be, the intent is the subsequent year, 2018, obviously subject to budget approval.
Right.
And then notices will be provided to local residents and impacted parties prior to construction. And I appreciate your time and concerns, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions to, what's your last name again? I'm sorry.
Keen.
Keen, Mr. Keen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
Bailey?
Through you, a lot of people have brought forth a concern at the stormwater management pond at 20 and Rice Road. And looking at, if you're coming west on 20, making a left turn into Rice Road, there is a fear that if there's some icy situations and so on, that a car could end up in that stormwater management pond. Is there anything in the regional plan to provide a safety feature so that this can't happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is intent for curbing to be going in there, and the boulevard will be raised in combination with the reduction in the speed limit. That should help to improve and reduce the risk of severities, and that will bring that situation to within the region's safety guidelines with respect to offsets to potential hazards.
And that will be in the 2017, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
And that
through you,
would-
in the 2017 building season or construction season?
Through you, the curb, I believe, is proposed to be constructed sooner as part of the works being undertaken right now as part of the town and that development. So that I believe is to be intended to be constructed this year, that curb.
In fact,
2016?
I believe that was the intent to have it done.
Not many days left in the year.
Oh, and there isn't, and my understanding is that there have been some constructor issues with Rankin Construction and the Hydro One, or
Been a delay with
Horizon
Hydro One, yeah.
contractors and some overlap in that work. So
Okay, so and I could answer to these people saying it's a work in progress then.
it is a work in progress.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The town in consideration of its developing its land, one of the proposals was to intersperse a street between Shaw and Summerside. And I noticed in your presentation you didn't allude to that or didn't mention that. Is that completely off the table now, or is it still under consideration?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that is under consideration at the moment. There's definitely no turn lanes associated with any of the streets other than the ones I've highlighted previously. So there are a couple of extra streets. There's one in Saffron Meadows, I believe, that doesn't have a turn lane associated with it. It's a local road. And likewise, driveways and accesses don't have turn lanes associated with those. But at present, I don't believe there is a proposal for a public road at that location.
Just as follow-up, is there still an opportunity to pursue that if we deemed it very important to our development?
The region has, through you, Mr. Mayor, the design drawings are still ongoing, and the design is not finalized. So there's still an input process, both as part of this public meeting, as well as potential discussions between other parties beyond that. So I can't say it's off the table, but I can't say it's on the table. I simply don't know.
Thank you, and the CAO has
Thank you,
perhaps
Mr. Mayor.
more information for the councillor.
We did show an access between Shaw and Summersides into a future development area, as council has seen. We did go to the region, the director and myself, we met with the Commissioner of Public Works. We were told at this point that they were not going to entertain it because it was too much of an unknown, that we were coming in with only a conceptual plan. And as Mr. Keane has indicated, that they were commencing with all the upgrades to Rice Road and that. We left the meeting in agreement that once we had a specific plan that would demonstrate a need for that entrance, we reserved the right to come back and ask for it, and they agreed. So that's kind of where we left
Fine,
it.
that's good. That's fine.
Others? A couple of things, if you don't mind, Mr. Keane. I understood that along Rice Road, although there would be left turning lanes or various turning lanes into Shaw and to Summersides, good news on Shaw, that there would also be sort of a turning lane in general center lane, is that?
That was an
third lane?
earlier, an earlier design concept.
Okay.
That the region has not, it's not the preferred option, it's not how they've proceeded
Okay.
on that design. So they're, rather than the, as you were saying, the continuous center two-way lane it will be a single northbound lane and then a single southbound lane with dedicated left turn lanes. So rather than the shared use.
Okay. Maybe just, it would be beneficial probably for council to have, and the
plan.
community, a
And
drawing, a
that's-
plan, something, because we don't really have
And that's
anything in front
something
of
I
us.
should have mentioned. There are drawings available for review at the planning department at the town. They have
Okay.
a set.
Perhaps they can be
available
included, Ms. Weens, in minutes of this meeting, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, and I can also provide a copy of my written comments,
That would
which
be-
outlines
that would be
basically the
excellent. Thank
works
you.
in point.
My second question is about the potential for a roundabout at Port Robinson and Rice. We have spoken to regional staff about that potential, and my understanding is the region's supposed to look at those first before they look at a signalized intersection.
And they had us, that was one of the early concepts that was looked at. Unfortunately, because of the land constraints with the new stormwater management pond, the geometry doesn't work in terms of having to shift it dramatically out of the way. So that was an earlier concept that was looked at, and it was deemed not feasible by regional staff and by ourselves in terms of just the available land that could be acquired, and it was not an option that was pursued.
That doesn't make sense to me because the pond was designed, and it could have been designed differently, and then there's a new development across the way, so I hope that's still at least under consideration. So I'll look
I
at
can
the
convey back to the
plans.
region.
Yeah, that would be
Certainly.
my personal preference. I don't know about councils, but that would be the personal preference in that area. Anything else? I think just, Councillor Papp, you wanted to?
No,
go
just
ahead.
quickly through you, Mr. Mayor. So as I understand it, from Highway 20, straight through to Port Robinson, possibly, it's only going to be a two-lane highway, two-lane roadway, right?
It would be a two-lane roadway with turn lanes, that's correct.
Because originally, I've
Turning lanes,
been
though.
here for a while, we saw 3 lanes. That, exactly what the mayor was talking about. So that's off the table.
The regions decided not to pursue that.
And then, just as the mayor has indicated, the idea, what I heard is that they're going to go ahead with signalization at that corner of Rice Road. Correct?
That's the intent as it stands, correct.
Need to pursue that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
thank
think-
you.
I think we should look at, I guess the final question I have is, the region's suggesting it, but you're here at our planning meeting, and the region's using our process, so doesn't that put us in the driver's seat a little bit?
I believe it does from a process
Oh, good, that's good.
standpoint. I believe it does, yes.
Good to hear. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Keane at this point?
Doesn't have an engine.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Ms. Weens, now to the rest. Now I open up for public comment, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
It was just
Yes.
odd to have that insertion a little bit into the plan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it is somewhat unusual because the two projects are tied together in this case, but we can open it up for public comments.
Okay, thank you. So are there any members of the public that would like to present to either portions of the, of what we've heard this evening?
Why don't I run around and I'll make a public presentation?
Going once,
Twice.
going twice, going three times. Thank you very much. And now for, it says committee input. Input from members of committee? Councilors? Any input from members of committee at this point? Do you want to put the motion on, and then if there's some sort of resolution we'd like to make, we can include it into the motion? Councilor Rybak, you have some input?
Not really input, I don't think. I'm trying to kind of understand the process. So this latest presentation that we received, I don't recall having any notice of it. There's nothing that I'd read in advance, nothing that we could read about. So we're being asked to provide input with very little preparation. And I'm just, I guess, a little concerned that I'm feeling ill-prepared and
Okay.
unable to respond
Can
particularly.
we get an answer from Ms. Weens?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public notice that did go out did indicate that there was this tie-in with the Rice Road project improvements. But you're certainly correct in terms of what those improvements are. We didn't have that information until late last week in terms of the actual plans. As you indicated, you thought that they were, a full three-lane design. That was what was initially discussed or had been presented at some point in time, and it has changed since then. So I can certainly make those plans available to council, and we'll endeavor to do so after this meeting. But for the purpose of tonight, you can certainly receive the presentation, and then once you've had a chance to review the plans, and we can entertain a motion or something on the design at the next council meeting if you wish.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that probably works. Give us a chance to think about maybe what we'd like to comment on, and give us a chance to comment on it before considering this portion of the process complete.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess it's a question/comment. It's, even though our process is being utilized to inform the public and us, jurisdictionally, the region has jurisdiction over that road. So if we as a committee were to object or pass a motion to send the matter back to the region, what would be accomplished, if anything, other than tying the process up?
Ms. Weens, can you help the councilor?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I'll attempt to answer that, and then I'm sure Mr. Keane can probably flesh that out in a little bit more detail. But essentially, this is a process for them to receive input and feedback on the design. And so if there's a motion to come to the region, then that would be something that they'd have to consider, whether they agree with the motion or are open to entertaining changes. At this point in time, we can't say, but they'd have to look at it, consider it, and in their final report to regional council, they'd have to indicate what the comments and feedback were and what they've done with those comments, if they're prepared to entertain them or not.
Thank you. I think, I'm just trying to look up the amount that's in the budget. There is funding in the region's budget, which was approved last week for this project, as we heard. I think this council could, maybe not tonight, but once we see the plan, could give a preference on a proposal and signal that to the region, and then Councillor Beatty and I could make sure that that gets communicated effectively along with town staff. Councillor?
I have a root question then. If our preference is a 3-lane road such that the most westerly lane could be used for a left turn lane or right turn lane at any juncture along that stretch, it would obviate the concern that we might have for development of that patch of our land, and save going back and having further discussions. If we choose not to do that, then it really doesn't have any impact. So I guess the first question is there enough road allowance there to allow that type of road development?
Mr. Keane, are you able to answer the councillor's question?
I am, through you, Mr. Mayor.
If you might come up to the,
Sorry.
we're recording the meeting, so if you
Sure.
can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There was a preliminary design prepared with the full 3-lane cross-section, and there is sufficient land available to provide that. There are some issues with utility locates, or utility locations of the existing and new poles, but there is sufficient road allowance width to accommodate that 3-lane cross-section.
I assume that the pole locates, et cetera, are not insurmountable.
No, through you.
So I guess the follow-up question is, was the decision to go to these two turn lanes as opposed to 3 lanes all the way down to Port Robinson financial in nature, or was it, I don't understand it. We're getting a piecemeal turn lane into Shaw, we're getting a turn lane into Summerside, and there'll be, presume, some turn lane at Port Robinson. So all we're missing is a fairly small little bits of road there. So I just like to understand that.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I don't know. That decision was made at the region by, I believe, senior staff as to which option they preferred.
I see.
And I don't know the rationale or their thinking.
Well, Councillor, what I'd suggest is maybe let's take a look at the plan,
Yeah, I think so.
and, because we don't really,
So receive it and then we can,
I think so.
yeah, I think that's right.
Those are the 3 issues that I have: the roundabout, or potential for a roundabout, a signal intersection, the center turning lane, and then a potential for an entrance
Yep.
between Shaw and Summersides.
I agree.
That's what I'm hearing from council. So, Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, is there a deadline for us to make comment?
Our process.
Through you, my understanding is that because it's tied to the Planning Act application, it follows the same commenting periods as whatever the Planning Act process allows for.
So again, our process is driving this. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All right, thank you very much. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey that Committee of the Whole receive the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to application file number 26T19-01016 regarding part of township lands 166 and 167 Summersides Boulevard, and the committee direct planning staff to prepare a recommendation report on this topic for committee's consideration. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Ms. Weems, do we need a separate resolution for what we've just received from Mr. Keane?
Mr. Mayor, through you, it should probably, we should probably have a resolution to receive the presentation by Upper Canada Consultants.
Okay.
Change that to presentation. Sure that we get a copy of it.
Okay. So, Councilor Ribbiak, would you move this? You have your name here. The Committee of the Whole received a presentation by Upper Canada Consultants regarding the, what would we call this, Ms. Weens?
Regarding the improvements to Rice Road, Regional Road 54.
And we would direct planning staff, again, Ms. Weens, to prepare a recommendation report. Is that correct? Okay. And Councilor Ribbiak, you okay with that motion?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Others, any to the motion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We look forward to taking a look at those plans. That's it for the planning. So thank you very much. Those that were here for planning, you're more than welcome to stay for capital budget. But I did talk to Ms. Hannah earlier, and she's not staying. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I'll have to, maybe the clerk can make note of this. I'll get a copy of the, I have sent it to staff before, but a copy of the capital budget approval at the region for Regional Road 54, Rice Road. And perhaps we can receive that at our next meeting. Follow up with you on that. Thanks again.
And here we are again.
Okay, council ready? Ms. Pupo, are you ready? Ms. Tunakaitis, thank you for joining us.
Good to go? Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present the 2017 capital budget requests. Council and senior staff received a copy of the 2017 proposed capital budget. It was sent out, an electronic copy was sent out as well today for Council's review and information. Again, the capital budget incorporates 20-year capital plan for infrastructure improvements. Specifically this year, we aligned the budget with the development that's going on in the East Fonthill lands to make sure that we could do some of the completion of as developers in those lands. And we also made sure that it aligned with the cash flow requirements for the development in the East Fonthill lands and the community center with priority in the 17 budget. Specifically, the strat plan update that we did in earlier this year, the deliverables that were identified by council and senior staff are a major component of this capital budget request for 17. Specifically, if you identify on the bottom, one of the things is to finish the East Fenwick secondary plan. You'll see that that's part of our capital budget request. There's also a capital budget request to make sure that the East Fonthill land development gets underway and gets completed. So these are all things that we took into consideration in evaluation. One of the things was that we wanted to make sure that wealth creation was driving the capital budget request for 17. We also made sure that we included any community input, so any information that was received at the public budget open house. We accommodated or reviewed that and considered what part of the budget it could go into, if it was 17 or future years, if it was capital or operating. The 20-year forecast for that we continue to be on focuses on longer-term development and sustainability. We also ensure that using this process, we stay focused on our strategic plan long-term. We provide adequate planning for financial needs. We ensure in transparency with council and the community, and we adjust the budget as required. So all projects were evaluated using the council-approved evaluation criteria as presented to council at the special budget meeting earlier this year. The projects had to had to be within the capital asset management plan. We had to know if the projects were in the approved strat plan. We did want to make sure that the projects provided value for money, so that was an evaluation criteria that weighed 19.8%. Does the project impact economic development? Is there a health and safety issue? Is there a negative impact on the operating budget by doing the capital project? Is the project easy to complete, manageable within the year? Has the community requested the project? So again, from that public open house, is there a community need for this project or want? What is the impact on the reserve, and what is the impact on debt repayment limit? So all of these things were taken into consideration and weighted to come up with our request for 2017. Just furthering on that, the expenditures for 2017 represent about approximately 23% of the total 5-year spending. The 5-year forecast is just over $40 million. We're about 10 for 2017 request. Major funding of capital projects is from reserves with annual contributions made from the operating budget, and the 2017 request or sustainability piece as presented to council at the special budget meeting is $234,555, and this request increases the reserves in various departments to ensure that we are able to meet the requirements in future years for replacement of infrastructure. Again, just back on the 2017 capital budget, this is the 5-year forecast, with the 2017 being $10,981,486, and 5-year total of over $46 million. Just so council's aware, within the $10 million in the 2017 budget, there are many projects that are grant application related. These projects will be red circled until such time as we have the grant award information, and then a future report will come back to council, but we will highlight those for the clerk so they can be included in the resolution. So I will go through each departmental request and stop after each section so council has the opportunity to talk about those projects being requested. In 2017, information technology is asking for $191,000. So various projects are the server replacement. We just lost a server today, so it's good timing for the server replacement. Records management software. This has come up. It was not something that was forecasted in the past, but it's been coming up as a significant issue within the town on records retention and records maintenance. This software would be responsible to track all of these different areas where we are required to keep our records under the TOMRIMS. I'm saying that right, Jordan? TOMRIMS system of records management. It also allows us to provide information for freedom of information requests on a timely manner. So this software application is something that is being reviewed by the clerk's department to bring in-house, and it would be utilized by all departments on maintaining their records adequately. Again, we have the annual equipment PSAB replacement. We have a main core switch at Town Hall that needs to be replaced. Again, as presented at the special budget meeting, there is a printer that is required at the arena to be bought out, and that's the $6,000, but it will be transferred to the new community center once it has been constructed. There is a Meraki wireless application that we need to do out at Fenwick in station number 2. That would just to help increase the width of the wireless that's currently ongoing out there. There's council iPad upgrades that we are are being requested to prepare. They are the bigger screen iPads. We are in need of some iPads within the town, and we are going to utilize the iPads that are currently held by council in that regard and provide council with the newer ones. And my understanding is they deal with Adobe and downloading documents in a much faster format, so this is something that's being recommended. Innovation technology is similar to what we had in this year. We're looking for a program where we can share a document, and that document can be worked on at the same time simultaneously by various departments. It eliminates some of the meeting requests that have to happen between various locations and so forth. So currently we are investigating that type of technology. And then again, the Microsoft licenses that are required for the town as we are expanding. We are required to have more licenses than we've ever had before, and this is a one-time license fee that will happen in the capital budget. So total request is $191,000, and as you can see from the chart here, The reserve will cover the requirements for 2017. There is a small there is a transfer from other departments as well. Water department, building department, they all have to pay their own fair share of the computer technology as it's corporate wide, and they're a standalone department. So that's the transfer in from those areas. And I will stop here and let council.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Pupo regarding information technology? Councilor Pat.
Very quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just so I'm clear, because I've kind of been through this in another area, this server replacement, this, I take it, is need to be done right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Sounds like
we have lost a small server today. The data that's on that server is gone on to another one, but this one will, it doesn't have to happen today, but in the new year, very early in the new year, will have to be replaced.
Okay, and then the records management softwares, I presume, would then digitize everything that we have record-wise throughout the whole corporation.
That's
And
exactly
once
right.
that's done, then we would
It's just maintenance after that.
just make.
Just every time you save a document, it would know that you have to save it under this tagline, and then you can search for your documents through that way.
Okay, and then
Any-
the innovation technology, I'm here, which is saying, so would you want to implement this type of technology this year? So sharing documents, being able to do it electronically as opposed to physically meeting, is that the whole intent? I may be oversimplifying it.
Yeah, it's that, and it's much more, like, with respect to even just if we take the budget process, individual sheets have to be sent out, and the budget file is one massive file, then you have to dissect it and send it out to each department. One of the things that I'm using my perspective of how we would use this innovation technology, I'm sure the CEO has other areas, but this would allow all directors to go in at one time and work on their budget simultaneously. So then we don't have to take the budget sheets back and then implement them back into a different file system. This is the type of application that this would allow us all to be in the same document, working on the same thing simultaneously, reducing the amount of input that is required and transferring and detailing and making sure we don't lose descriptions or numbers or so forth. So that's one avenue that, from my perspective, the Department of Corporate Services could use it, but we've talked about many other things. When you come into a meeting room and you want to work on a document together, you're able to access that document simultaneously around the table, see what's going on the screen, and do the input that you would have instead of taking notes and then going back to your office and sending stuff to another department. So, and it also works across locations or from one office to the other, where we could all be simultaneously in some sort of document. And it can work at council as well. Like, this is just like the bottom of what we've got into on identifying how it could be useful for us and saving of all that time on with respect to, like, even a budget process, for instance. So I don't know if the
Thank
CEO
you.
wants to add anything? No?
Councilor.
Yes, I encourage you to do that. I've seen this being done in the healthcare sector. Multiple different disciplines working on the same document, and I'm referring to health records where you have access, obviously, to the confidential, but it saves the time of multiple transactions taking place, that you can see it right then and there. So I encourage you highly to move towards that. So I'm glad. Thank you for the explanation.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions through you. Have we looked at, many organizations are going to cloud servers
Right.
and are avoiding having to buy into hardware and maintain hardware and change hardware. That all is offloaded onto the cloud server. Have we looked at that, and is it a viable alternative for us? Have we got costings, et cetera?
Ms.
We,
Pupo?
through you, Mr. Mayor, we have looked into the cloud server software at this point in time. The IT manager at this point in time, there is not, the attacks on the iCloud are much greater than on a regular server, and the firewalls that are coming in. So some of the issues that we're having currently in-house is due to the cloud. So right now, he's not recommending that we go to that mechanism until there is more protection against the phishing and the scamming through the cloud. And it's much easier to attack the cloud than it is to attack a server that's held in your location. So these are the applications that he has for the server to be protected under the Barracuda firewalls and so forth, are one of the strongest. And we've had similar, like, some attacks in this past year. So at this point in time, his recommendation is not to go there until the cloud has that like Apple used to be at the point where you couldn't even touch it, but now it is becoming open, and there's being attacks that are much more serious in nature. We did currently just put, or recently just put phishing cyber insurance onto our policy to help protect against it. But until that time, and this is part of this whole server replacement, the 18,000 could be the cloud server, but we still haven't come to that conclusion yet. But at this point in time, with what he's got for information about the tax on it, that would not be his recommendation for 2017.
Just before you leave that one, are you going to leave that one?
I'll leave that one.
Thank you. Anyone else do that? I was at Hydro board meeting today, Niagara Peninsula Energy, and they were talking about servers, and I was just showing the CAO, there's a new, at least new to me, concept called hyperconvergence, which is somehow, it's not the cloud, which is, as we just heard, isn't safe, but it's sort of like your own cloud or something, your own private cloud. Anyways, to use all this technology. And instead of using servers, you use this hyperconvergence. So maybe it's something that the IT staff can look into.
That's correct. He is currently looking into that as well. It'd be like the town of Pelham cloud, and your stuff is all held in a document here. Right now, just the investigation, that's brand new, that's new technology and so forth. So he is looking into all of that, but before the purchase of these servers are made, that this will be a consideration.
Okay, good. That's good.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else do that? Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question around innovation technology. I understand the value to that. Is that not something that could be done through eScribe and expanding the writing of the reports through eScribe such that all the directors could go in and be part of the reports, et cetera, et cetera? Is that not something that could be formatted within that?
Through you,
particular
Mr.
software?
You can't be working on the same report at the same time in eScribe. Like if I'm working on my report, I'd have to go back in and save it, and then I'd have to provide it to someone else. Here, the difference with this innovation technology is we could all be in the same document at once, sharing the document, and whatever changes we're making, it's still updating the document, and it's still updating the document based on the changes that are being made by others. So this is a whole, it's regardless of the application. So if it's an Excel document, you could go into the Excel document and make these changes. In eScribe, as soon as you upload a document, it changes it to a PDF. So there is no formatting or changing of any of the numbers or the wording and stuff like that in there. You have to be in the Word document, and then that is only requirement by one individual. So very limited with that.
Anyone else on that? Just to build on that, the school board that my kids are part of, they've now switched over to this Google Docs platform, and there must have been some back-end innovation technology that they had to do that. All the teachers are using it for chats on Shakespeare. The kids are using it for putting a document together, so they have a group project, and 15, 14 years old, and they're using these programs to put together a slideshow presentation. You do this part, and it's all kind of all in real time, and they're all at home on their Chromebooks. So it's, but there's some back-end technology, I guess, that's required in order to do that. So it sounds like that's part of what's in that innovation technology.
That's correct.
Last year, there was 25,000 in the budget for innovation technology. I presume that wasn't spent, is that correct?
It has been spent on some items, like one of the items that was in the requirements was a Pelham app, and that is currently
okay.
being worked on.
Okay.
With release by the end of this month. And just with respect to the records management software, it may be a little bit more than the $40,000. There is some room in that innovation technology from this year, but we'll bring that report back to council when we find out what the exact number is for that records management. At this point in time, this is the number that we've got from the company that is comfortable for this meeting, and there's more sessions that have to happen to determine what our true needs are before we can get the actual dollar amount here.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on information technology? Councilor Riviak, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I appreciate seeing the list ordered by evaluation score, because that would indicate to us, I guess, if we wanted to cut something back, we would start at the very bottom. And that brings me then to the one that is at the very bottom, the additional licenses. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? Who's looking for licenses that doesn't have them now but but needs them, presumably?
Yes, in the past, Microsoft allowed us to share licensing, and with the shared licensing, for instance, if you had a laptop, you could take a Microsoft Office application and put it onto the laptop that was similar to the individual. Now the license is per a piece of equipment, and they will be coming to audit, so we need to make sure that we're in compliance with their audit their requirements. And the 27,005 means those are the ones that we are in deficit for 2017, that we must be compliant by 2017 with those licenses.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what are we saying? That if we don't spend the 27.5, then there are some people who will not be able to do any work on their machine? Is that what we're saying?
If we don't spend the 27,500 for licensing, then there's going to be some individuals in the organization that can't have the application on their computer. So the unfortunate part of this rated low, because it was something that just came up as a requirement from Microsoft Office. So it wasn't in the capital plan previously, because we didn't know that this was coming down the pipes. And it's not in the strat plan, obviously. So the weighting became a little bit lower than most projects, because it's not something we had considered before, because we were getting along fine with the license applications that we had in the past. And then Microsoft stepped in this year and said, we are going to require you to get all these other licenses up to snuff by 2017. So that's why this is there.
So it's a mandatory.
So, Mr. Mayor, just a comment. It seems to me that those licenses aren't an optional feature that we can drop off. It's a must-have, and therefore scoring it really isn't valid. It just needs to be. And I would suggest that the scoring, I guess, in the future would be about things that we actually have a choice about. We don't seem to have a choice about this one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any others on the information technology section? Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the fire department, this is the annual replacement of bunker gear and pagers, total request of $43,000. Whoops, did I go the wrong way? So the fire services department, it has a healthy reserve that it's building, and we're remembering that it's building it so that it can support the SCBA equipment in another 10 years with the purchase that's coming at that point in time. But so all the funding is going to be from the reserve. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Councilors? Councilor Durlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chief, what's the status on that? We had that presentation about the region changing their dispatching type thing, which may involve some costs with us. Is there a status report on that? Or can you give us a verbal?
Chief?
Yes, here, Mr. Mayor. It looks like it's going to come together in the beginning of 18, early, the first quarter of 18. It really depends on St. Catharines, who provide our dispatch services. Depends on what their timeline is at. They right now are looking at spending their capital in the early of 18. So whenever they do, we would anticipate asking for permission.
Looking forward, we better build something in for 2018 then.
We have
It is.
been for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, thank you.
So just to that's that replacement of pagers piece, Chief?
No, through Mr. Mayor, the actual,
Could you go back to that slide?
2018.
450.
This is 17. So the pages are the radios are in 2018 in your budget binders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chief, the pagers,
since when we drafted this up, I won't be using that money this year. We're gonna drop that because Enbridge money, we used the Enbridge money to do that, so it's gonna offset it. So we're not gonna be doing it. It's just kind of a last minute thing. So really, the only expenditure we have this year is the bunker gear for 35.
okay. Ms. Pupil, can you go back to the previous screen? So we can drop number 2 there?
Yep.
Okay. Can we just deem that as being done? Okay. So then if councilors will look in 2018, and maybe Chief will get you to comment, there's the radio equipment replacement, that's the 450,000, that's your kind of earmarking?
Yeah, so 3 years ago, when we first identified this communication need, we put through the policing and the regional estimates, we put the number at 450, so that's what our capital reserve has been based on for this 3-year accumulation. But on the good side of things, since the police have just started to make the move, or they're changing their equipment as we speak, and with St. Catharines and that coming on board, it looks like that number is coming down monthly or quarterly, and right now we're probably down to maybe around the 300 mark. So it depends on the policing and what kind of pricing they get for us. So it's good, really, we won't really know until late 17 and early 18 what that actual number will be.
Okay, thank you. Does that help, Councilor Gurley?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else to that? Anyone else to other items? Chief, I'm sorry, in 2018, it says Service 1 up from the previous, last year's budget. What is Service, remind me what Service 1 is, sorry.
Service 1 is the pickup that we have at Station 1 for training, shuttling people around, doing whatever we need, going to calls for equipment movement and people movement. Not 100% sure on that. When we had put this in the initial report, the mechanic, not the previous mechanic, the mechanic before, had basically told us the life expectancy of that truck would be done. The new mechanic's come in, has done some work on it, and it looks like we might be able to stretch that out even further. So we won't know until a little bit later this year to see how that comes together. So I'm really going to take that off the table.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Councilor Kersey?
Be as good a time as any to ask the question, because this question kept coming up in my mind when I looked at all things. When I look at the 2016 budget binder, and I look at what the closing balances were in reserves or projected and what have you, and then I look at the opening balances that we actually have. In some cases, they're higher, some cases they're lower. Can you just give me a general description, without being specific, about the department, but why some are higher or lower? Is it that we're spending more, spending less? Like, just give us some.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The equipment reserve start of year is always an estimate at this point in time because we don't have 2016 year-end balances audited yet. So we take last year's audited balance and then we say, okay, for 16, we assume you're going to do all the projects you did at budget. So we have to deduct that off. And then we have to look at all the reports that went to council that affected this individual department's budget or the roads budget or the planning department, and we have to deduct those off as well. And those are the unplanned things. So if you saw, like, for instance, roads from last year to roads from this year, it is because exactly that. There was many projects that were approved throughout the year that were not part of the budget that now are affecting it in a negative way. So that's where the impact will come from. So this is why, it's mentioned that until we have the audited balance of these and also actually know what the actual cost of the projects that are being done in this year are, that is just the best estimate we can provide to council at this point in time.
I see.
Thank you.
I guess another big general question, and maybe I should hold that one till the end. It's more around the meaning of subsequent years other than the year we're working on, and how relevant they are.
You can ask it now. I think it's, in terms of this budget, this particular budget, it's possibly pertinent, so.
You know, we talked about a 20-year capital budget and 20-year capital planning, and we can't even get out 1 year and stay within our framework. And I find it's kind of frustrating because we're kind of either zooming ourselves or we're zooming the public when we let on that we're going to have a 20-year capital plan, and we can't get out 1 year and stay within the confines of that capital
Counselor,
plan.
I just comment as to,
So
ask you to, I don't know why you'd say that we can't get over 1 year,
but anyway.
so I'd ask you to just maybe temper your comments slightly in that regard.
My apologies to staff. I get carried away and
Thank
I
you.
get excited when money's on the table, or off the table, so I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Let me phrase the question. What's your perspective, or why do you think that we are running into the situations that we are, that I see within the budget binder that we've been provided, where there are significant variances year over year from what we were given last year when we started the 20-year plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that with respect, one of the things we do when we have the budget requests come in is we want the directors to identify to the CAO, and I, sitting with SMT, identify why that project needs to be pulled forward. from, say, 5 years out to current, or why there is new projects on the table. So for instance, in some areas with, roads is a good example, they've done some in-house efficiencies with respect to how they do asphalt on the roadways. So an asphalt box, something, I can't remember the name of it, was brought forward
Get to it in a
with specifically identifying that this is going to eliminate a lot of the work that's being done in that department, and reduce and make it more efficient for that department. So it's something that wasn't on the horizon, but through a process of finding efficiencies, it became something that they felt was a must, so that they could provide those efficiencies and then do some other work in other areas that they weren't able to do before. So that's an example of some of those. Some of the other stuff I'm not picking on Public Works, but it's one of the bigger areas. Like with the bridges, the inspection report has come in and said that the bridges are in critical need for repair within 2 to 5 years, as opposed to original one 3 years ago says that they could go stem out to 10 years. So these are some of the reasons why some of these projects get moved forward a little bit, or some new stuff shows up, like the records management system. That was something that was not on the horizon, but has proven to be something that's in deficit with us with respect to our records retention. So it's something that has been brought forward so that we can clean that part of the information process up. So I hope that helps answer some of the questions.
So in terms of the 20-year budget, if I might, it's sort of the educated estimate at that time, your staff's professional estimate at that time, and there's many variables. That's essentially what I heard you say.
We have our asset management plan, our system that says what our useful life of our assets are with respect to the vehicles, with respect to roadways and so forth. So we can lay out a 20-year strat plan based on that. And that would make, your best guesstimate, because that's what the facts are telling you, the accounting facts and the way that our policy is set. However, what we can't do is know that maybe, there's, for instance, this water main's going to have 17 breaks next year and now become a critical piece of infrastructure, when it says in our asset management plan that it's supposed to last another 10 years. So those are the items what we would need to pull forward to say that, this is now becoming a health and safety risk, and we're going to have to take care of that. But rest assured, as the projects come forward and SMT sits down with each one and every one of them, we want to make sure that that project is absolutely necessary for this coming year. And if it's not necessary, then, some of them we're red circling for council tonight to say, like, they won't go forward until another report comes forward. But others that, as we did the evaluation process and stuff like that, we were determined that this is now the best guess that we have best estimate for 2017 with these projects.
Thank you. Counselor?
Well,
maybe if there's some specifics you can ask about them as opposed to a broad.
no, that's okay.
Flash.
That's okay. I'll wait.
As we go through the budget, I'd encourage you, if there's a specific one that you're confused about that sort of led you to that premise.
It becomes a bit philosophical, Mr. Mayor, in terms of what are our expectations of future year budgeting. And so if we have to pull, for example, a project forward, is it our expectation that something would be dropped off so that we can have maintenance of our reserves going forward? Because that's what establishes sustainability of the municipality.
Right.
So that was sort of what I was driving at. So let's take the fire. So for next year, $553,000, but all of a sudden, something comes up where we have to spend another $100,000, should there not be a look at dropping some of those projects off, other projects off that are less critical, in order that we maintain the same budget number so that we can drive the reserves in the same way. That's sort of what I was driving at.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how significant or how important we view reserves, because that feeds into the whole reserve package.
The CAO wants to comment.
Sure.
Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly what we do.
Okay.
Just so that you're aware that if there is a project that comes forward that wasn't expected in that particular year, we go through and we say, okay, well, to afford this now, we need to defer A, B, C, and D that equals roughly the same amount to further years so that we can make those reserve balances work. And that's a big part of the challenge we had this year, was to maintain reserve balances while trying to accommodate the work that needed to be done, while trying to balance it with the next 2 years of major significant construction. So I like to think of it as budgets are academic. You use your education as far as what's going on, what you think. Your capital asset management is largely academic. You make assumptions based on your best information. And then when the academic collides with the real world, that's where we have to, that's where we start making these adjustments. So rest assured to council, that's exactly what we do. And that's what makes budgeting on our end very challenging to get it to the point where we can bring it forward. Because we want to take all these factors of what we know in the real world at, in this given time, to make a budget that works, maintaining reserve balances, keeping taxes low, et cetera, all the while pushing things out or adjusting things in the future as this information comes in, and that it, allows us to literally sharpen our pencil on it. So I understand your question, and that's exactly what we do.
Thank you. Others? I think just the reason I encouraged you on the fire and bylaw services report to ask that question in general is because maybe it's one that is something that you can sort of feel and a little bit more than maybe some other departments. So, for example, in 2031, the chief's suggesting that the aerial truck needs to be replaced. And he's put in $1.2 million for that. Well, there's a whole bunch of variables on whether that is that going to be 1.2 million in today's dollars, 15 years from now, et cetera, right? So there's an ongoing change to the budget, but I don't know of anybody else that does a 20-year capital plan. I think most are 10, but council's strategic direction is, as we said here, to maintain a 20-year financial plan and in order to have that long-term financial resiliency. So I hope all that helps the council, and I don't know if any other councilors want to say anything at this point or whether we move on and bring up any specifics. Councillor Papp, you want to comment?
Well, just quickly, it also points towards the need for defining what services we want to provide our local constituents and what we're prepared to do in order to accommodate that. But that's a very worthwhile discussion, because I've been on the other side where we've done exactly what you've said, Mr. We trade projects off depending on what is needed at the time. Fortunately, sometimes that, in our case, it involved debt. In this case here, you have healthy reserves. So if this is what the corporation is looking for, I think that's something. I think it'd be worthwhile at some point, not tonight, but just to talk about the last couple of years past and see where you actually did that exercise. You actually went through that. I think we did that a couple of times. We deferred things because we just couldn't, right? We couldn't finance them, we couldn't do them, and we left them. So I think it's very worthwhile. It's not trying to, mislead the public or trying to tell them that we're not completing. And sometimes unexpected delays occur. I know that happens. Projects can't get done for many reasons, and they're deferred and accrued for the following year. So it's a worthwhile discussion, I agree.
Thank you. Anyone else? Let's continue to Ms. Pupo.
The next budget requests are from town facilities. Again, the very first one is Marlene Stewart Street Park pool mechanical and deck repairs. This was part of the condition indexing that was done on the study for the facilities and the town buildings. However, it is a grant application, so it is being red circled until such time as we're aware of what the grant, if there's a grant award for this. We're expecting to hear something in early February on this project. And then the other things are the Harold Black Park concession, decommissioning, asphalt repairs, which continues annually at the cost of $10,000. There's some electrical work required here for $12,500. The Fenwick Lions concession canopy. The Fenwick Lions were here last year and asked for this project to be done. It's included in there. And you'll see on the next page their contribution to it is also included in our funding. The septic tile bed was deferred from last year. It's now been brought forward. It was deferred because the costing came in a little bit higher than what was projected. There's a partial roof replacement on this building of $42,000, and then new to this budget is the Tice Road Operations Center repairs to accommodate staffing relocation. And then again, there's masonry repairs, Park Lane, Fontaine Library, Model Railway, etc. Also on the condition indexing for the buildings of $24,500. Total request is $518,100. So funding for this, again, this reserve is in a deficit at the beginning of the year, and it continues to be in a deficit at the end of this year. So it was one of those ones that was challenging to make it balance above zero for this year, but this is the funding mechanism that we have. We have possible grant donation of, or grants of $69,600 for the pool mechanical, and then the donation from the Fenwick Lions of $18,400. And I will stop there for any discussion from council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp?
Sure, very quickly through. Madam Treasurer, could you explain to me what's going on at Tice Road? Are these what repairs to accommodate staffing relocation? Can you somehow explain that a little further?
Let's
Yeah,
let's
I will
turn
refer
to the
director.
Director of Public Works.
I just need to
Ms.
know,
Clemencio?
understand what's going on.
There's been a report prepared to give you some more background on where this comes from. So I'm understanding that it's been prepared, it wasn't approved for tonight, but it can go forward next week if you wanted to save the discussion and perhaps red circle this for tonight. But to give you the highlight, there are some health and safety concerns at Tice Road. In addition, in support of the transition of staff to support the new community center, there remains the arena and what happens with the staff and the equipment at the arena when that is decommissioned. So there is a long-term plan for the transition of the staff to Tice Road. Helmightway was done about 1.5 years ago, and this is the end result of this, to accommodate the additional staff moving over the fleet and equipment that goes with staff, and addressing the health and safety issues at Tice Road all at the same time.
Okay, thank you. So just to build on that, Councillor, I understand that there is that report, and staff have suggested that perhaps that's something that council can look at. They are suggesting that it be red circled, and that council can look at that report at our P&P meeting next week for a start to look at that process.
Well, I look forward to that, because but the other part, when I hear health and safety, that's mandatory. Those are things that you're going to have to do, if I'm not mistaken. You can't get it, I mean, the red circling really has to do with more the physical relocation of staff, right? It's nothing to do with the building. There's no, are there code requirements? Is there issues there as well? Or why don't I wait till, I'll wait till the report comes, okay? Will that explain all that? Okay, thank you. I'll wait.
Yeah, I haven't seen the report. My understanding is that it's, unless somebody else wants to jump in here, as the director did state, that they've looked at all different options and used the creative problem-solving process and have a potential solution that they'd like to recommend to staff, or recommend to council from staff.
Okay.
And so this is more an earmarking, I think, than the council needs to be brought up to speed on that, and the community, so.
Yeah, I'm looking,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
So I think perhaps the clerk can include that in the red circling of, and then we'll deal with it. What I proposed to staff is that we can deal with it on P&P next week, and if we need more time, then we can take more time. Okay? Anything else to that one at this point? Okay. Others on the facilities? Councilor Pop?
Just quickly, through you, Mr. Mayor, is the roof leaking? Is this our municipal building here, roof replacement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is. It's just a portion of the roof.
Okay.
My office has regular buckets when it rains.
Oh, okay.
We currently have a tarp
That's
on
fine.
the unit, but I don't know if you've noticed the tarp, it's actually right
You're having
where-
waterfalls come in? Okay, I got it.
I told you that used to be my office, it's no longer my office, so.
Okay, that's good.
Some of that was in previous budgets, I think, was it
Yes,
not?
it was. It was.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Others? The pool mechanical deck repairs. There's a resident that is very, very keen on helping with this, upgrades to the pool. Perhaps I'll connect them with staff and just see if there's some sort of involvement that they can have on that, so. It's in a good way, it's all positive, so. Any other questions? What about to the, I had a question about 2018 model railway building window replacement. That was kind of an issue that came up, and we heard from the model railway building group about that, and yet it's being suggested for 2018. Is there a reason why it's 18 and not 17? And I know Councillor Kersey's done a little bit of digging around on that. I don't know who can answer that. Ms. Clemencio, can you answer that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, without my former budget binder in front of me, I'm not sure if it shifted. But if it did shift down from 2017, it would purely be as a result of the process that we discussed earlier, just trying to give and take and move projects to allow for that. We try to schedule them based on that facility condition assessment, schedule the timing of the projects, but not all of them can be accommodated, and we're trying to move them around based on risk.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so the clerk has added, now you've added both the Marlene Stewart Street pool mechanical as a red circle because of government.
grant.
The grant. And the Tice Road Operations Center. Is the Lions, is that a confirmed grant? The
The
concession
Lions is
canopy?
a confirmed donation. Will be what's that? It's a confirmed donation from the Lions, but
Okay.
there is going to be an application for the trillium portion for us. So once that comes back, we'll come back with a report. But I think it is something that council asked us to prepare to move forward with. So I think the report would just be that we did not receive the funding, and the project would probably be recommended to move forward regardless.
Okay.
So we're just trying to get some additional trillium funding for that.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, sorry, seniors, I can't hear. Trillium funding?
Trillium.
Oh, good, good.
Okay. Looks like council's ready to move on.
Okay, the next department is the cemeteries. What did I do?
At the
So
back
there's a
of number
request
four.
of $12,000, and it is for a precast storage shed for and such for the cemetery attendant. Again, this reserve is in a deficit, remains in a deficit for some time. So I'll stop here and let council discuss.
Is it under Public Works?
Yeah,
Sorry, it's at the back of the town facilities. It's in section 4. It's the last section in there, in your binders.
Doesn't have a tab of its own.
No.
Good. Buy more capitals, you can buy more tabs.
For discussion?
Any discussion? Here's cemeteries. Is it, I guess as I read this and went back to it, I don't understand, and maybe you could explain quickly. This budget continues to be in a deficit.
Right.
Why can't we charge more? I don't know. I don't know how to phrase that. Why can't we?
I can
Why
speak to what's
can't
happened in
we
the
do
past
something
with
to make
respect
it
to
so that
cemeteries.
there is more money in the reserve, and perhaps, I don't know if it's through user fees or as opposed to, like, what mechanism can we use?
The cemeteries reserve is funded purely from the operating budget at this point in time. The cemeteries department operates usually right at a balanced budget or at a deficit within the department. In the past, we have tried to increase the fees of the cemetery plots, and we were not successful with selling them as much as we had hoped to be. So we are now in line with very other municipalities and so forth with respect to the cemetery costs. But when you have a fee for cemeteries, the majority of that goes into the perpetual care fund, and the rest goes into the cemetery's revenue. As you know from the perpetual care fund, we are not allowed to spend any money in that fund except for the interest that's earned on the account. So we regularly invest that in GICs and in the investment market to try and earn some income. On average, we're earning about $5,000 to $7,000 over the year, and that's put into the reserve to help offset. It has to be used first into the operations of the fund if the fund needed them to maintain its health. Other than that, it goes into the reserve. So there has been no transfer from interest in the past few years because we've been using it with respect to the operating expenditures. And so that's the status of the past. I don't know if the Director of Public Works wants to add any more to that.
Sure, just quickly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We did a basic review this year of profit and loss for this group.
You don't have to stand up if you're getting shot in the eyes there.
Oh, great, thank you. But at this time, and we did review the fees, and not review the fees in comparison to other municipalities, but the status of when that was last done and the impact that that had. We did confirm that we are on par with where the fees should be based on the comparison to other municipalities. And we feel there's something a little bit more systemic here, and it's probably related to service level. So without knowing more about, we dug into a little bit with the wages, the salaries, and the other expenses related to operating this business, if you will. There's not a lot of wiggle room, so it really comes down to what service level we are currently providing and if we're prepared to make a change in that to get back in the black.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
That's it.
Anyone else on cemeteries? Go ahead.
The next department is the park facilities. This is all the parklands within the town, Centennial Park, Harold Black Park, and so forth, both passive and active parks. They are kept separate in a separate budget because the parkland dedication helps to fund this, and it has to be accounted for through this budget process. So the total projects are $184,500. They again include the ash tree borer removal, or ash borer tree removals, rail trail pavement parking. We've split that rail trail of the project up this year to accommodate the need to have healthy reserves. The design and public consultation for Wyland Heights Park development, that is completely DC eligible. Centennial Park Moloch garbage disposal, that's something that we wanted to put in this year. Security systems at Harold Black Park and Centennial. Remove 4 wooden bridges and replace with culverts at Bradshaw Park. Bradshaw Park has its own little fund that will pay for that expenditure. The Centennial Park Diamond needs 2 bullpens, or number 2 bullpens. There is repair a trail bridge and handrail at Harold Black. Netting and infield cutout, and that project is specific to the request from the Pelham the minor baseball team that came in this year. The paint liner for the soccer fields, tools for grounds and maintenance facility attendants, and again the cenotaph maintenance and conservation treatment program, which is every 2 years, just to maintain the work that's been done around to all of the cenotaphs. So funding through the parks for 2017 is 89,000, or the opening balance is 89,793. There's a tax levy increase of 145,877, or that's the increase accumulative. And then the parks reserve funds, again, the donates or funds helps to fund the projects in this area that are eligible for funding through the parkland dedication account. So the projects are the reserve remains healthy for 2017. I'll stop and let discussion of council.
Thank you. Councilor Rivak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is probably through you to the Director of Public Works regarding the rail trail pavement parking, if I may. Is this with reference to the corner of Foss and Balfour, the triangle that has been suggested for parking to get cars out of harm's way, and to which an offer has been made by residents to maintain it going forward? Is that what we're talking about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was.
You don't have to stand up again.
The triangle itself, we looked into the land ownership, and there's some challenges there, but we did identify a place where the road allowance was wide enough, we thought we could accommodate a small parking area, a pull-off area onto the shoulder. So it's not a big ticket item, it's really just to accommodate with some granular, so that there'd be a supported area that cars could pull off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So the actual triangle is not owned by the town. That's what we're finding out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct according to our tool we use for land ownership.
But in any case, we can get some parking off of the traffic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Who owns the triangle?
Yeah, who owns the triangle?
Fenwick Triangle, okay. Councillor King.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My question is really out of curiosity, because we have the Moloch system here at the municipal building, and now it's being considered in the budget for Centennial Park. Does that reduce waste management services for the region? Does the region give us a break because we do not require the same servicing to pick up as we used to?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that there is a reduction on the waste management through the region for this. I will refer to the director.
We contract that out, right? The region
Contract out.
doesn't pick up our,
The Mullocks are picked up by a contracting
By-
service.
Yeah, by Cotton or someone like that.
Yes.
Yes.
So the region does not, they would come and pick up our bins here, but they won't pick up the Moloch system, but we still have them. They are still picking up the bins on a regular basis as well.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know.
they pick up
I
the
wanted to
recycling.
know,
not-
yeah, whether their services were decreased as a result
Did our
of
cost
having,
increase?
yeah, so do our costs decrease with it?
Okay. Just sorry, just on that, that we currently have a dumpster at Centennial Park, so this will eliminate that and allow us to do the recycling through the Molochs as well, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Pap?
I'm very happy to see the security systems at Harold Black and Centennial. My question is, what will result of this? I've never seen so much damage this year at Harold Black Park than I've seen in all the years I've been on council, again. These security systems will be tied to what? Who would be watching? What would you do? Just out of curiosity.
Is Van Ravens way?
No, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's security, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, they'll be tied into the security system avenue that Mikey currently uses and monitors here. So we're able to access that, provide information. We have provided information to police on many occasions.
Okay.
And it identifies the individuals, and we've been able to act on it. So it's going to be set up very similar to that, like what's done at the pool. You can go back and look at the tapes and see what's going on and so forth. So we just believe that that extra venue of video recording and people knowing that they're on video will help them to, will entice them to stop vandalism within our parks, so.
Good. It's sad. That's all I can say, is that just this year, for some reason or other, just seems to have escalated. Just don't understand it. Maybe the security system, like we did with, remember the famous pool incident we had, and Councilor Durley and some of us were around, maybe that will send a message to them that you can't do this to public property, especially, I mean, I can't help but say it, it's like consistent over the last few months. Very disturbing. Anyhow, thank you.
All right, thanks. Others? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy with 2017. I think the spending is reasonable. But as we move outward from 2018 through 2021, we're not operating with reserves, we're operating with deficits. And I guess my question, Mr. Mayor, through you is there a way that we can take a look at these subsequent years and massage them in such a way that we move out of the deficit position and move towards being in a, at least no later than 2021, that we be in a positive reserve position. Some of the years were pretty aggressive, and I wondered whether staff could give some consideration to having a look at that and maybe bringing back a subsequent report to try and work towards positive reserves in this area, these areas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We can definitely look at this. Some of the challenges we had is the development of parkland within the new subdivisions and the need for them to get moving. The residents have been contacting us regularly to get these projects moving. So one of the things that I did not include on here until 2020 is development charges contribution. Technically, there should be a development charges contribution towards the park as well, but we, for this year, felt we need to make sure that we understand what that development charges looks like, the fund looks like at the end of this year, making sure we always have that money available for the debt financing for the community center. So that's why we kind of let this project go with a deficit for the next year, a few years, so that we can bring that back closer to the next year to say we're comfortable now adding DC or we need to push these projects out. But we wanted to identify that these projects are something that are being requested on a regular basis from the community. So we've left them in there with that funding mechanism. I could have simply put the funding up top, but then as we got to 2018, if the development charges revenue reserve fund isn't able to fund it, we're going to have to make some decisions anyway. So we left it off the table for this one. But we certainly can bring a report back indicating what it would look like if we were funding through that mechanism and how much we would need to take from it. You know, there's the option for parkland dedication to pay a little bit more. I've tried to capture all of the parkland dedication contribution in here. The difference would be, instead of reserve, DC funding. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it'd be a useful exercise and might bring some comfort to the table and also to the public to understand that there are mechanisms out there that are not reflected in these numbers, but development will spur and help to allow us to go ahead and provide these services. Otherwise, if that development is slower than expected,
Exactly.
we have to move off
Just.
that direction. So
Yep.
I think it'd be a useful exercise, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There's also 300,000 in the next 4 years for ash trees. That would bring us into a, you know, into the black, so.
I hear you.
Just 2 ash trees removal, it is a capital item?
It is, yes.
Okay. Why is it a capital item?
It is, there's several items in the capital budget binder that are not truly asset management capital recorded in the books. However, they are items that are capital in nature in the sheer scope of the project. So this is a huge scope. It's going to end up being over $500,000 in total. It is something that would sway the operating budget and put a levy on the taxes that is something that's kind of like a one-off for the next 3 years. So when we have projects like this that could variance the budget to a significant degree, we put them as part of the capital budget. When we do our audit, we make sure that that is not a capitalized item, but it's an item that is just expensed through the reserve. So that's why these items, and you'll see the same with the planning studies. Not one of them is a capital in nature, but they are always kept on the capital budget.
Okay, that helps. Any others to park facilities? One other question about, there's a deferred project that was in 2016 and now it's deferred to 18, which is the parking lot lighting and the skate park lighting. Is there a reason why that's been deferred? Ms. Van Ravensway, or who wants to answer that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have, over the past year, we've done maintenance on the existing lights that are there, and being that they no longer sway in the wind and they work, it was felt that we could push it off so that we could do the other projects that are more of a priority
Okay,
at the moment.
so keep the infrastructure that works.
For now.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Oh, and I'm pleased to see the Harold Black Park Trail Bridge. It says add handrail, I hope it's adding handrails, both sides. But that's kind of a precarious structure back there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out one item, the Cenotaph Maintenance and Conservation Treatment Program. That was just something that we had indicated that we would recommend to council going back, I think it was 2 years ago now, when the whole Cenotaph restoration project came up. And one of the criticisms from the public was there was no reserve to be able to maintain these things. So we have introduced this, and I wanted to point out, it was a commitment to the public, so if council approves that, that's the reason for it.
That's great.
That's a good thing.
Saw that.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Pupo.
Okay. Section 6 in the binders is the roads projects for 2017. The first project is Summerside's from Station to Wellspring Way. This project was approved by council in 2016 to move forward as part of a previous report that went to council. It was the beam construction award project that happened in 2016. That project is 80% recoverable from the subdividers, developers that will abut along that street, so 20% of it will be covered by the town. The other, I'm not going to read all the projects to you, you have them in your binders, but you'll see that Station Street, Pelham's Town Square to Port Robinson Road, that is that grant application we applied through OSIP for. That one will be red circled until such time as we know what the grant award is. Again, mid-February, I've been told for that one. And then we do have the East Fontaine Block secondary servicing, and that's Block 2, that's $1.2 million. That does have a DC component. Also, some is provided from the subdividers as well, that they have to pay us back for the minimum standards for the secondary plan, and then the upgraded features would be covered by the town. So this is one of those projects that we will have to look at what is available in the DC. We're working with Upper Canada consultants to determine the priority for 2017 and making sure that it fits within our funding elements that we have. And then finally, just another high dollar value project is the bridge replacement at Maple Street Bridge, 40 meters south of 16 Road. That one is $618,250. Total budget of just over $7.4 million. So you will see from the funding that there's a number of different funding elements that are available for the roads reserve for 2017. 1.8 of this comes from development charges. So that is those projects such as Station Street that won't go forward until a further report comes to council. And that's when we can determine what the funding mechanism from DC would be. There's also the debenture of $784,640. And if council can recall, in 2013, council approved $5.4 million in roadways in the East Fontaine lands. So that debenture is part of that approval because it was for Summerside Street and it was also for Wellspring Way. So Wellspring Way will be debentured after this year when it's completed. This would be the portion that would be debentured from the Summerside piece. So it still fits well within that 5.4 envelope. So I know that the debenture debt repayment limit is still met with this project. So the others, if you've noticed on the reserve funding line, there's a developer's contribution to servicing. This is new for us as developers ourselves. This is the estimate that the developers have to pay us back for the works that were being done. And that includes the upgraded to 1.2 million, the Block 2 East Fontaine secondary servicing. So portion has to be covered off by the developer, and it also is for Summerside Boulevard where the portion has to be covered off by them. So I've included that in all the future years where the projects are affected by, I'm going the wrong way again, by developer subdividers agreements and so forth.
Thank you. Sorry, did you say, before I open it up, did you say that one project should be red circled? I
Yes,
apologize.
Station Street water main replacement.
Oh, Station, okay. So that's number what here? The clerk's trying to get it here.
That is Road 0917.
09.
0917.
Because of the grant.
That's correct.
Thank you. So now opening it up. Councilors? Councilor Papp?
Just general comment, thank you through you to the Director of Public Works. Small potatoes considered the millions, but the concrete repair replacement program was well received this year. Continue to do that. The roadside ditching is another one. And I have noticed, and it's just a matter of semantics, that I know several considerations for expenditures on culverts. It looks like we're continue to experience a problem, not only repairing but replacing these culverts throughout the town. Is that a fair assessment?
Mr. Mayor, the two last projects involving culverts are related to municipal drains.
To the municipal drains, okay.
One is for an unopened road allowance and one is farm culvert crossing. So they're both related to municipal drains, not on open roads at this time. The culvert repairs, Road 15-17. Those are a result of the bridge and culvert inspection program that happened this year. So they're miscellaneous riprap repairs, erosion repairs to extend the culvert and bridge
Throughout the municipality.
throughout the municipality. Yeah, they're
I got
listed
it,
there.
okay.
Just quickly, to those culverts on the drains, they're our responsibility to fix, I think, not
You're in,
to pay
you're
for them. They're in the road
authority.
allowance, so they're ours. We can't
We have to fix
put
it.
it on the, what's that called, the assessment of the drain?
Yes, to benefiting homeowners? No, we cannot.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Junkin?
Yes, I know we've discussed this at length in other previous council meetings. I guess we'll give it another kick at the can. I'm looking at the bridge replacement at 618,000.
Right.
And when we compare that to what we did on Sawmill, then I think this is obviously the way to go. But as we had that consultant come in here, I believe last council meeting, and he said that the bridge for that, concrete bridge in that location would be 144,000 more, but would give us an extra 30 years. I'm wondering if a council, as a council, we should kick that around one more time. I mean, it's one thing to spend $1 million, but if it's only going to increase the cost by 150,000 and we gain 30 years, I'm wondering if that isn't something we should look at again.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is the exact bridge that was used as an example in the report that was brought forward last week.
Yes.
So the report was to document that all the 20-year capital forecasting for all culvert replacements of large span were knocked down to the option that didn't meet bridge code, just to allow for the lower initial cost or initial construction cost.
Yes.
So if council would like to take a different direction on that, then
I think we need to.
we'll certainly follow suit.
Thank you.
I thought we received it favorably, and I'm pleased you raised it, Councillor.
I'm sorry.
I thought we received that favorably and understood and had a good conversation, so I
Yeah.
look forward to hearing other comments around the table on
Yeah,
that.
well, like I say, myself.
That was your thought, that we
My
were
thought
gonna
was
do
that
that.
for an extra 144,000, and if we gain 30 years,
Yeah.
I'm thinking we should be doing that. That's my own thought. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there's others that want to talk about that bridge for the moment. Councillor Rivak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The part of the discussion that I have a void in is what's Maple Street going to look like 30 years from now, 40 years from now, and the extent to which whatever bridge we build may need to be reconstructed at some point in the future. It seems to me that the timeline that's suggested here is probably a practical one. And to think of 75 years from now to a road that may change as Fenwick grows and changes, might be, I don't know, it might be more than is needed in those circumstances. I have no difficulty with creating a bridge that lasts 75 years on a road that I know is going to stay pretty much as it is for 75 years. That's my comment. So I'm happy with the number that's here, unless someone can kind of build that picture for me.
Okay, others? I guess it is in the green belt, so I don't know how it's going to change in that area. I guess my question would be, based on the presentation we had at our last council meeting for the director, if we go this route, we're we're not following the, whatever that code is or whatever, from the Canadian Bridge Builders Association or whatever it is, guidelines, right? And I guess the presenter said that's our prerogative as the authority, but we have to do so knowingly. Is that a fair assessment of what was presented?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is, there's two main components to that code that we're obligated to meet legislatively. One is that you build a structurally sound bridge, and that's where he had offered some comment that there is no wiggle room on that. The second is that one requirement that you had the yellow highlight on, that the structure last at least 75 years. But there is that clause in there saying unless otherwise approved by owner. So that was the purpose of the report, is just to make sure you as owner are aware that we're not meeting that requirement, but there is no legislative penalty for that. It was the default assumption that engineering took, that you'd want to meet that 75 years. In reality, we found that the steel culverts last about 30 to 35 years, and the bridges are projected to last closer to 100 years rather than 75, but we use 75 to be conservative. So the actual comparison is a little bit different when you're looking at the 150,000, but it's an initial construction cost issue that appears to be on the table.
Councillor Junkin, you want to comment further?
No, just the rest of the council doesn't seem to be willing to do the 144, so I guess we stay with the 618. I have no preference. I just, like I say, for 144,000, if you can gain another 30 or 40 years, I thought it would be wise spending, but at the same time, I know we discussed this before and said today's taxpayers pay the 618. 40 years from now, somebody else can pick it up again. So, that's
That
the way it
approach
goes.
as well.
That's the way it goes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Others, any comments on that?
No.
So right now it's in there at the 618 unless council decides to change it. Oh, Councillor Kersey.
I have
on
a
that
more
issue?
I have a more grassroots question with respect to this bridge. When I look back on 2016, Maple was not until 2020, and in fact, Cream was here. And now Cream is 2021, and Maple's been moved up. I just like to hear some comments as to why that's happened, and we're not privy to all these reports, so I just would like to have some information.
Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, we had the benefit of a very dry summer, so we coordinated the inspection to happen during the peak of the dry season, so we were able for the first time ever to have full inspections of the culverts bone dry. So what was usually below the water surface that couldn't be seen even by the inspection in hip waders going through, now we had a full view. And it changed pretty dramatically what the projected condition was, or the condition known by what was above the water level. So we had to shift around the priorities of these replacements based on that. 3 of them were found to be completely disjointed. The actual culvert is split in 2 down its longitudinally, so that, but this whole split was below the normal operating water surface level. You couldn't tell until we had the benefit of this season's inspection.
Councillor?
Oh, that's very good. Benefits of a drought, right?
Right.
Fine, that's all it's at.
Okay, anyone else on the bridge? Okay. Councillor Junkin, do you have anything else?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Kersey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions through you. I see that we're spending some money on Hay Street for reconstruction, and I think there's some water main work and all of that type of thing. I'm a little surprised, given that Haste was not done that long ago, so could you
Just
just
a
give
separate
us some background on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is out of the scope of the original construction that happened in 2013, 2014. This is further south, on the leg of Welland Road. So this is some remaining very old cast iron that's proven to be troublesome. And we're trying to align this construction with the sanitary work being done on Welland and the development being done at Pelham and Wellands. We're trying to time it that the resurfacing of that whole stretch could happen at once, and we can get some efficiencies and costs.
Okay, that's great. Okay. That's great.
Next.
Next, Roland Road rehab, 2016 projected to be 23,000, now it's 91,000 or 97,000, 91,000. Change of scope or just underestimate or?
Ms. Clemencio?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a few things at play there. One is a change of scope, the extent's changed. Two was that the original budget was brought forward from the previous 5-year. So when we prepared that, that was based on the 5-year estimate, was prepared before my time.
I see.
And we also identified some extra drainage issues that we needed to address in the construction project.
One last question. I'm a little uncomfortable asking this, even though I don't really have a conflict, but I do live on the street, and it's with respect to Sulphur Springs.
I was going to ask that.
I see we have put aside engineering money to determine how best to repair it. And yet, when I look forward in subsequent years, there's no earmarked money for any repairs. Is it anticipated not to repair the road, or is the fact that there's no earmarking going forward is really the question that I have?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point, without the consultant's assessment, we just aren't sure. One of the options is to keep it closed, and the Class EA and the other steps that would be required to keep that closed, we just aren't sure what that might involve. And the other options for repair, because they vary pretty dramatically, we just didn't know what placeholder to put in. So at this point, we thought we would take our kicks next year. If we do have a better idea of what might be planned, it won't be in the capital plan, and we'll have to, the scoring would reflect that, but we would at least have a better number, because the ranges we had based on what could be involved there are in the hundreds of thousands, so we're just not certain. Didn't want to put that loose of a placeholder into the 20-year plan.
Counselor?
Just as a suggestion, I wonder if any consideration's been given to buying some of the land which would be to the east of the where the current road is. So in other words, you move the road at the bottom of that little hill eastward, which is basically scrubland, and move right away from the repair and put a guardrail up. Probably be the cheapest, most direct option. But maybe you can throw that out at the consultant.
Ms. Clemencio?
Through Mr. Mayor, at this point, yes, great idea, and that would be something we would throw into the mix for a consultant who's got much more experience at these issues to solve.
Thank you.
Just on that, do we need to do that assessment or that study? Can't we, like, I've heard people saying, oh, you're going to study this, why can't you just take the money and do something? Sorry. So how do you answer that?
Mr. Mayor, it's just something that we feel is beyond the department's experience, because there would be multiple agencies involved, because there are options that we might overlook. And there are some consultants that this is what they have done frequently for other municipalities. We feel it'd be best to capitalize on that expertise. The 35,000 is an estimate from a consultant saying if you were to choose an option, that would include some design work. It could include the initiation of a Class EA. So we might not get to that 35,000 if we find a solution, a preliminary solution that is much more cost effective.
This is along a tributary to 12 Mile Creek, is that correct? So when you talk about other agencies involved, it's not just sort of a backcountry road somewhere or whatever on my property. Not that I own property in the country, but you know, this would be Ministry of the Environment, this would be, who else? The Conservation Authority, Ministry of Natural Resources.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct, and there's quite an art to pushing through a suggested solution to
Probably
have
DFO
those
as well.
approvals in place.
Fisheries, okay,
That's where the experience is needed.
okay. Well, that helps with the answer. Why don't you just do something? Well, because this is actually a very important tributary to 12 Mile Creek, and it's a fish habitat and cold water stream, and so it needs some due diligence. Thank you. To that, Councillor Junkin?
Well, just to the Roland Road repair from the park down to Sulphur Springs. Again, that's another area that the road is always, unfortunately, so narrow. And I remember talking to the previous Public Works, saying that unfortunately it's that narrow because we don't have any road allowance to work with. So I take it that must be the park, that if you wanted to buy any more road allowance, you'd have to buy it off the park, or obviously we've looked at that before, but what do we keep running into on that particular spot? Because as you go down that bend and then you go the other bend, you got a tree right there that's getting hit all the time, about 10 feet up. But we don't have any room to do anything else with that, I take it. To you, Mr. Mayor.
I presume you're not hitting the tree, Councillor.
Oh, no.
Ms.
Through
Clementio.
Mr. Mayor, this wasn't identified as an option at this point to take more road allowance or to investigate taking. It's to work with what we have.
Okay.
It's actually not a sufficient or not a considerable budget.
Yes, I see
It's
that.
merely some minor base work and resurfacing and to address some drainage. But we'll most certainly consider it when we can confirm what that road allowance
Yep.
is.
Okay. Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Others? One question for the treasurer. There was an announcement last February from the province about increased funding on the Small Communities Fund. And I believe it was using the provincial gas tax revenue, and that was to increase, in their quotes, dramatically over the next 3 years. I note that you're using a lot of gas tax revenue. Are you projecting that increase in this budget, or we're still waiting to hear what the next year's allocation will be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We have not heard what the incremental impact would be for the town of Pelham. So to be conservative in this budget, we've maintained the same level. There will be a contribution from the Small Communities Fund.
That's the one I was talking about. Is that what I said?
There's two different, there's the federal gas tax, and then there's the OSIF that has two components, the formula-based funding and the OSIF project that we applied for under Station Street. So that funding, last year we received a formula-based amount of $112,000. That will significantly increase over the next couple of years. However, it's not shown here because it's part of the grant funding. So what they've done now is taken it and said, you can only have a maximum of $2 million in funding over 2 years, which includes your formula-based funding and the top-up funding. So right now, until we have any idea if we're getting the grant application, we won't know if we're able to use the other funding for other projects in here. So that report will come back to council. If we do get the funding, we won't be able to get funding for another 2 years. So that's the methodology around the
And
funding.
that's the Station Street.
Station Street
Okay.
project, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Councillor Kersey?
Just quickly, Mr. Mayor, so if we don't get funding for Station Street, what is the backup plan? Station Street is an inherently important street, with respect to the overall East Vaughan Hill development and tying everything in. And what's our backup plan in the event that we don't get funding? Do we have one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did have it in the capital forecast last year that it would be one of the a little bit more delayed, but we would be working on the water main to tie that in earlier on than the actual road reconstruction and secondary servicing and such. We felt that could be pushed out a little bit, but the actual water main is becoming problematic, and that was something that we were going to still continue to move forward. And again, that will come back when the grant announcement is made for council's consideration.
Okay. And you said February is when we're going to hear that.
Early February.
Okay. Great. Anything else? Okay, there being none, I think what the clerk has added is number 9, project 9, The
That's correct.
design and construction of the water main and replacement on Station Street, as we just discussed. So you'll see that when we get to the motion. Is everybody good? Do we need a stretch break, or everybody's fine? Okay. Free continue.
Okay. Section 7 covers the vehicle request for 2017. As projected in the last year, I think it was in this 2016, the 5-ton Volvo is due to be replaced, and it's estimated at $275,000. Again, there's the reference to that hot box asphalt repair unit that would be helpful in the Public Works Department. And then there's the small SUV for the Building Department that's been requested due to the life cycle of that vehicle. And that would be funded straight from the Building Department, as they have to fund their own vehicles. So total request, $437,400. The transfer into the reserve of 30,000 is identified here, and the balance at year end is 60,144. However, it does become problematic year over year with the reserve balance being in a deficit.
Councilor Kersey?
I'm the Grinch that stole Christmas, I guess, but when I look at this, I have a problem trying to approve this in that we don't have the answers yet in terms of contracting out. And if we look through from 17 through to 19, we're going to spend $825,000 on new vehicles to plow the roads. And I think before we commit to these types of large expenditures, we need to have the answers with respect to contracting out. Other things hit as we go down the line as well with respect to lawn mowing and all of that sort of thing. But I think we need to really have a good hard look at this whole contracting out issue before we agree to spend the significant capital that we're looking at over the next 3 years. Some of the smaller stuff I don't have a problem with. That's necessary to keep the basic stuff going, but I wouldn't vote in favor of supporting this unless it were redlined, subject to receiving a comparative with respect to contracting out versus keeping it in-house.
It's fine.
Which ones would you suggest, and maybe the CAO can assist, or other staff, in terms of the red circling?
Well, for example, VEH 0117, the GPS, if we make a plan not to continue in-house, then we don't need the GPS going forward, so that's another $15,400. I think we need the rest, probably. The riding lawnmower, it's $25,000, and until we make that decision and invoke it and get it on side, I could live with that. But I think we need to get those answers, particularly as we go forward for 18 and 19. It'll give direction. And again, it ties back to what Councillor Papp says. What are our service levels? What are our service expectations? We need to have a discussion. It all ties into that same discussion, Mr. Mayor. So.
Yep. Right, so we're dealing with 17 now, so
Yeah,
the two
so
that you've
217.
identified that you're suggesting, we'll see what council colleagues say for what we call red circling, is 01 and 04.
Right.
Mr. CAO, do you want to comment?
That's fine, Mr. Mayor. If you council wants to red circle those, we can come back with comparative reports. We have started looking at lease versus buying, but we're not, again, due to the time it takes to do that analysis, we're not that far along. But if you wanted to red circle those, we can come back and give you a specific report and a recommendation based on leasing or buying on that.
Well, I think the councillor's not talking specifically about lease versus buying, about whether we're in that
Contracting
business.
out, yeah.
We're in that
Contracting
business
out.
of doing snow
Right.
with that vehicle or other vehicles.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Others? Okay, so can we add that to the red circling list? And for those watching at home, red circling means that it has to come back to council for a specific report to approve. And so the discussion we have is about sort of that broader discussion. Okay. Anyone else on those items? Anyone else on other items? I had a question, and perhaps this is where the CEO got the concept of a lease. In terms of the SUV for building, does it make sense to lease that as opposed to buy it if it's coming out of, I'm just trying to get my head around that. That's its own budget area, its own separate area. Does it make sense to buy it or lease it? I don't know.
Well,
Have
through
staff
you.
looked at that, or?
Through- We have not done the actual lease versus buy analysis where you got to take your community values and so forth. The issue becomes a little bit more problematic with vehicles that are requiring more maintenance and repairs. You're still required to maintain and repair your vehicles even on a lease. However, the benefit becomes that after 4 years when the lease is up, you're constantly getting a new vehicle, and the risk of having major repairs becomes negligible. So we haven't done that true analysis. I was talking with the deputy treasurer that that's something that we should be looking at to move it forward with respect to these smaller types of units for sure, right out of the gate. And it's just with the timing of the capital budget and the work that was required to get it here for tonight, that was not something that we were able to accomplish before this budget.
So I see Councillor Papp wants to comment, but this building department vehicle, so the maintenance on that, et cetera, that's all paid for by
Building department.
building department and all, okay. Councillor Papp, did you want to
No,
comment on
I think that
particular-
analysis, you need to do that. I just went through this in another scenario where some contracts with some manufacturers now include long, very, very good maintenance programs. So you're right, in the end, the one, they were even suggesting in the 4th or 5th year of the lease, we could turn it back, get brand new. So there are advantages to it, and it does, the maintenance, depending on what kind of vehicle you get, we were very fortunate, this particular manufacturer, which I'm mentioning, is very inclusive of everything, like oil changes, all that stuff is done. So it costs us nothing for the first 3 years. So it's a worthwhile scenario.
So, Council, do you want to
We
red
could certainly
circle
bring
number
it.
10 as well? So that's that small SUV for the building department, and just look at that analysis, and no doubt it'll be useful in other areas. Is that okay? Councillor Durley on that point?
Thank you, Mr. Reiner. I'm just wondering how critical is that new vehicle? Is it a necessity now, or do we have a vehicle that will stretch a little bit and give us the wiggle room to red circle this?
Ms. Weens? Thanks for the question.
Mr. Mayor, through you, that is slated to replace the 2009 Ford Ranger, which is used by one of the building inspectors. I know that Ford Ranger's coming close to the end of its life. The other thing is that our chief building official does not have a vehicle and continues to use his personal vehicle.
So the councilor's question is, we're going to study this, it's going to take a couple of months. Can the vehicles last that long, or?
The vehicle can certainly last a few months, yes.
Sorry, can I just add, the report on the lease versus buy for a vehicle of this magnitude would be very simple to bring back within a month to council. So this is something that we've done before in previous workplaces, so I
Councilor
certainly
Durley, you
can get
okay
that
with
together.
Yeah, red circle for a month, just as long as we're not jeopardizing the flow of work, actually.
Right, yeah, this thing needs to be replaced, it's falling apart, it's a critical need, et cetera. It's a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Reviak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to bite at the bait. So tell us, through you, Mr. Mayor, the need for a vehicle to replace the use of someone's personal vehicle. Is that coming up? What was that all about? Is the chief building official?
Ms. Weens?
You said.
About a year and a half ago, there was a vehicle that the chief building official was using, and it became offline. And we haven't replaced that vehicle as a result, and so in the last year or so, he's been using his own vehicle and being paid mileage and so forth.
Maybe that should be part of the review as well. If there's, Councillor, sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I suppose in the light of that, I would have expected to see the vehicle on this capital program, unless we've determined that it's cheaper to pay for the use of a personal vehicle because the mileage is so low or whatever. I mean, why isn't it here if that's an issue? Because it clearly is, or you wouldn't have raised it through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Weens?
Well, we thought we'd bring it up because it has been, he has been using his personal vehicle for some time, and we also know that Ford Ranger is also coming to the end of its life. And so that's why we brought it up. It's also been, this year is a good year in terms of financial resources for the building department, and it's something that we can afford to purchase this year.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, are we saying that the request for that additional vehicle is in the capital plan?
The two vehicles? No, there's not two for the building department, just the one for the building department.
So I'm lost, Mr. Mayor. If there's a need for the second one, but it's not here, but we're talking as though there's a need for it. So can we clarify that? Are we asking for two vehicles or one vehicle?
Ms. Weens?
We are asking for one vehicle.
With the report that comes with the leasing, we can bring a report that shows if the mileage is a better option or another vehicle. I think certainly that the building department this year with the revenues, in previous years.
And the activity.
And the activity, they were in a deficit situation in the reserves, so that's why they were being methodical with how they're bringing their trucks forward. However, this year, they're in a good financial position. So it is something that can be considered, but we can bring certainly that analysis on the mileage versus buying a new vehicle. The chief building official doesn't go out as often as the inspector, so there might be that economy with the payment of the mileage, but we can look at that with that lease alternative.
Okay, Councillor?
Just a final comment, I guess. One is, in two parts. One is, we must have a policy with regard to when we supply a vehicle and when we expect somebody to use a personal vehicle. And I'm not hearing any reference to anything objective, any guideline of that nature. And the second part of that is that I'm still a little confused as the nature of the discussion. We're not asking for the second vehicle, but we're not happy either with continuing to pay for someone's personal vehicle. So anyway, that's my comment. I'll leave it there.
We'll come back with the report.
Mr. CEO?
We'll come back with the report as the treasurer indicated.
Okay. You wanted to add something, Ms. Clemencio? Ms. Clemencio is biting her tongue, ready to add something, sitting on her hands.
Through you, Mr.
Go ahead,
Mayor.
Ms. Clemencio.
I think what has happened here, and I'm not too sure how it led to it, but there was a public works, or there was an administration car.
Right.
And the car was here at Town Hall and was used by the administration generally, engineering, and the CBO. Then it transitioned a bit. The CBO was using it more dedicated, and the engineering group was sharing, and fleet was short a vehicle. So last year, through some clarification, we realized the administration car was actually a car not funded by the building group. So we respectfully and gently and kindly asked if we could pull that back into fleet to support the rest of the groups. That car has actually since come off the road and was replaced by the SUV that sits in engineering now. So it was some jumbling around, but was making sure that the building vehicles were paid for by building, and if there was an addition to fleet need, that was identified at that time. So it really is about having enough fleet for the staff that we have needing to drive them. There are shortfalls in building, there's shortfalls in public works. Very often, administrative staff have to take their own car to meetings just because of the situation we have with the fleet.
Thank you for the clarity. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to suggest we red circle this until the report comes back in about a month.
Thank you. We'll do that. Thank you. And look forward to the discussion at that point. 3 vehicles red circled. Ms. Pupo, would you please proceed to the next
Absolutely.
area. What are we on here?
Next section, section 8 is wastewater. Oops, I just put the gun here. Again, there's some projects on here that align with the roads types of projects. The first one being the water main replacement on Station Street. This is the grant application project. Again, it's been highlighted and will be red circled, and it's project 0117. Also, we have, through the Clean Water and Wastewater Fund, we have received funding around just over $500,000 for eligible projects. One of them was identified as Hurricane Road Sewer Lateral Replacement, and that is the grant application there for $85,000. This is a project that you must spend, it's 2/3 funding, 50% from the federal government and 25% from the province, but it has to be a project that you would not have otherwise done in this year. So you'll have to pull from the future. This is something that's going to come to us annually now. So you can't use a project that you would have budgeted for, but you have to use a project that's in your capital asset management plan. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but this is the project that we identified as eligible. There's a water main component to that as well. But again, they won't move forward until we receive award news in February. And the remainder are just the annual sewer lateral replacement programs and such.
So do we need to red circle, we need to red circle 1, do we need to red circle 6?
Yes, you do.
All right. Questions? Oh, did you get to the funding? Sorry. Your next slide.
Yes, the wastewater fund is healthy. It remains healthy. The grant awards are identified in there if we do receive them, and it remains healthy to 2021.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp and then a Kersey.
No, just quickly through you to Madam Treasurer. I'm just fascinated by moreover, the 2018, the construction on Merritt Road. Maybe we'll talk about that further because I'm hearing all kinds of fascinating developments of what's going to happen to Merritt Road. So I'm curious, and I'll just leave it at that. If we do the construction, then some other things happen at the region. Because this obviously will open up all that development along that whole area, which is what we want. Then there was some discussion about, you know what I'm talking about, expanding the roadway? So I'll leave it at that. I just have some interesting neighbors asking some questions about that.
There's, just as the town does we do a 20-year plan, Councillor Papp, the region does a 10-year capital.
Right.
And there's some things in the 10-year capital in relation to that
Then you know, yeah,
road.
yeah, that's right.
But the first phase is an environmental assessment,
Right.
which is required, so. And then they've earmarked funds in the future for actual works. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just for explanation, you got Station Street water main replacement design construction under wastewater. Could you explain that?
Ms. Clemencio.
The water main project is the driver, was the driver for the Station Street original water main replacement project. The sanitary is a cost related to conflicts that might be incurred in that water main construction.
Okay.
And the Station Street project morphed a bit this year, was brought forward because of the funding application. So this was simply sliding the original project forward with the same description as the water main, that's the driver, but it's triggering road reconstruction aligned with development and has a sanitary portion to it. It's just trying to keep consistency between the budget items so we know that they're all related to the same project.
From a previous question, my understanding was if we do not get the grant, we are still going ahead with the water main replacement? Would we still be going ahead with the design component then with respect to the sanitary at the same time? Did I understand that right?
I do believe, I'll let the Director of Public Works, but I think a lot of the design work has already been done for Station Street. We were just tying in the Summersides component with the actual Station Street water main. So I know that with respect to the water main replacement piece, we did discuss that would have to come back to council to say this still needs to go forward. The water budget is very healthy to maintain that project. So we're just earmarking all of it right now, though, so that we can wait till February when the grant award comes, and then we can let council know what we're doing to move forward. Okay?
Yep, very good.
Thank you. Others? Okay, so 1 and 6 are going to be added to the red circling. Anything else on future wastewater? Okay, well, go to water, please.
The water budget is in section 9. Again, there's the true grant applications in here, the water main replacement Station Street, and also the hurricane water main replacement Chestnut to Highway 20. That is under that Clean Water Wastewater Fund application process. And the rest of the projects are basically annual water projects. We'll let council have discussion.
What, the backflow program, water backflow program, or is that wastewater? I'm just confused, Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a drinking water distribution system backflow program.
Our backflow program was approved by council in a previous budget, or not a budget, outside of budget, so it's maintained in its own separate fund.
So I'm just, Madam Director, the drinking water backflow protection program where risk properties install backflow devices based on the town's bylaw. Can you just give an example, like in general? Like, what does that mean?
There was a guideline released by the Ministry of the Environment that drinking water systems are very susceptible to private site connections. So you'll remember there was a backflow incident in Stratford with the car wash and the drinking water system went pink. And it's because systems are connected, and provided you can pressurize whatever you have in your plumbing at a greater pressure than what's in the water main, whatever you have on your private site can be directly pumped backwards into the drinking water system. So it's a very high-risk area that most municipalities have developed backflow programs. So a susceptible site or a candidate site might be an agricultural site with a standpipe or a reservoir of pesticides plumbed in, dry cleaning sites, car washes, funeral homes are constant ones. So those types of private connections, so that you're protected from anything backflowing into the distribution system for which the municipality would take responsibility.
Perfect. I got it now. Thank you. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along that same line, given that there are many municipalities across Ontario, probably across Canada, that have adopted these backflow programs, is it necessary really for us to go out and hire a consultant? Could we not adopt a best practices program, do some of our in-house research and bring forward a best practices program that we could adopt? And I mean, I presume he's going to tell us how we can fund it, the types of funding that we would offer, incentives that we would offer, the types of facilities that we'd be looking at. So given that these programs have been around for a long time, could we not do it in-house and save ourselves $60K?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have the expertise in-house. It's primarily creation of a bylaw. Council chooses to go that way. And the contents of the bylaw really from municipality to municipality vary pretty dramatically. Some are based off the CSA, Canadian Standards Association standards. Some have gone completely independent and written their own based on enforcement needs, implementation concerns, issues with constituents. So they're customized bylaws depending on what they feel would be most readily accepted by the municipality. In addition, there's a program that needs to be laid out based on risk and how we would enforce whatever is implemented in the bylaw, as well as how would we assess these sites, who would inspect, what would that implementation period be. These are all definitely information that could be decided by researching other municipalities, but certainly nothing that our engineering group would have the time to research thoroughly and kind of find what those best practices are. Every municipality has learned through lumps and bumps on this. Some have been in backflow bylaws for 10 years, Regional Halton, a really strong one. Some smaller municipalities have struggled and implemented halfway and are half compliant and half not there. So we really need someone to highlight, take all of what's been learned and formulate a good, strong bylaw and bring it forward with a program for implementation and enforcement. It would involve several public information centers, because you will get some resistance from constituents on this. It's quite a big program to undertake, so we wanted to make sure we had the expertise to help us with it.
Thank you for the comprehensive answer. Councillor, anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you. Others? Thank you. Planning and Development?
Planning and Development is under Section 10. The request for 2017 is 182,900. The biggest item being the East Fenwick Secondary Plan and completion of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, mapping, and the bylaw itself. And then there was 20,000 added for community charrette for planning for the sale of the surplus lands charrette. And the funding will come from the planning reserve. Contributions from grants are 65,000, and that is on the East Fenwick Secondary Plan. However, this won't be a red circled item because the secondary plan has to go forward. It is 100% DC eligible, but however, we're confident that we can receive a grant from the region to cover half of it. Okay?
Questions? Congratulations, the highest score.
Yeah, she got a 10.
It will happen in 17? Yes, it will. Oh. Councillor Pat?
Well, I hope it's just a grammatical error, but the charrette, we've had quite a bit of discussion. I presume this charrette's about the sale of our surplus lands other than East Fonthill? Or is it specifically about the old arena lands?
Ms. Weens, can you explain number 5, please?
It is about the arena lands, and if there is enough money in that budget, then we would do another one. At this point in time, the arena lands are a bit of a priority in terms of coming up with a design for what to do with that.
Just convey it to the neighbors. They understand that?
Well, that's,
Mr. CEO? The question from the
I just
councillor,
wanna-
the question from the
yeah.
councillor was, do the neighbors understand that there's a charrette taking place? And Mr. CEO, you met with some of the neighbors.
right, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. I met with a group of the neighbors, and we indicated to them that the best way to proceed with having the discussion about what development would take place in the arena site was to go through a design process. The design process of choice is a charrette, and a charrette brings the neighborhood together and interested residents, stakeholders. You do the plan together, so you get buy-in from the front, rather than having a consultant do a plan and then try and sell it to the community when they haven't had any input to it. So because this is a potentially, well, it is an area that is of great interest to people, we want to include them from the start. So this funding will allow us to do that early 17 and then start working towards a plan for the eventual consideration of council to dispose of the asset.
If that's what we do.
It's council's discretion in the case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Papp?
I'm satisfied, so it'll put us to a position where we can make a decision that's complementary to what the requirements are for our purposes and for the neighborhood. Thank you, Mr. CEO, I'm satisfied with that.
Thank you. Just to that, I think there was some discussion that there was a potential for doing something this fall or starting this fall. Is this a project that can start in Q1?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we would certainly want to kick it off early in 2017.
Good to
Good.
hear. I know everything in this planning is a priority as well. Everything across the municipality is priority, so. Others to the planning director's capital budget here? There was a change on the economic development plan. It went down substantially from what it was originally contemplated. Is there a rationale for that?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, it was again looking at trying to be very conservative with our budget numbers and fine tune them. We looked at, you know, what was more involved with an economic development plan and thought we could streamline that down and do it relatively easily and hopefully within budget. Also, there's been some discussion about using an intern to assist with that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Councilor Pat?
I'm very glad to hear that, and I don't mean to minimize it because in light of everything that's going on down around our community and everything else that's happening, I just want to share that our community not far from us, more towards the north, they're thinking of hiring an economic development officer to go ahead and redo that. I think we've spent a lot of time and invested a lot of money, not money, but a lot of our knowledge and expertise,
Resources, yeah.
that I think it's the time for us to put that together, and I would encourage Mr. CEO to get that thing, get that whole, if you want to call it, game plan ready, so we can share with the others of what we're doing. The timing couldn't be better as far as I can see from what's going on around us. Because questions are being asked, as you know, that people are looking at investing, they want to know, what are your plans? I think we've walked through most of it, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Now, this is another one that has a joint tab.
At the back of the planning and development section, there's the municipal drainage, which is new to the 2017 budget process. So, for 2017, there will be cleaning of the Keenan drain. As you can see, that there is a benefiting properties contribution, estimated at $12,000. We have established, this is part of our sustainability piece, to put $20,000 in so that the town is paying for its benefiting portion of these works in the drainage as well. So this just documents the projects that we know of for the next 20 years and keeps us in line, and it keeps the public aware of what's coming up it's another communication piece with the public on the drains that are around them and what's coming up with the cleaning and the maintenance of them. So I will let any discussion happen.
Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity, I see that the North Pelham drain has nothing slated for it until 2019. And that's an engineering process that's going on now. I wonder if we can understand those dates.
Ms. Weens?
Yes, thank you. So we have a report that we are going to be bringing to council in January on the North Pelham drain. It's that dollar amount that you see there slated for 2019 is what has been identified in that report for budget for establishing a drain in the North Pelham area. We anticipate that one will be somewhat contentious and there will be appeals to it. That could take some time to get through and resolve, and so we're actually not budgeting for the work to happen until probably 2019 to get us through that process.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I take it then that whatever costs are incurred in that process are an operating cost? That's why they're not here as part of the drain?
Ms. Weens?
My understanding is that any of the kind of design costs and costs to go to whether it's the Court of Revision or the Drainage Tribunal are costs that will be incurred ultimately back to the benefiting property owners. So the original petitioners, if this drain is not to move forward, the original petitioners will be responsible for the costs incurred to date.
Right. Mr. Mayor, we're one of those original petitioners as a town, so I suppose we should have some money put aside for even that. And I'm wondering, is that an operating cost then or a capital cost?
Can you assist, Ms. Weens?
The drain, I can assist.
Or Ms. Pupel?
This is very similar to the studies in the planning department. They would be operational. They are here simply because to track them through the capital budget process. Again, when the auditors come in, and they will audit this just like everything else that they audit, but we will identify them as an expenditure that's being paid and not to be added to the books as an infrastructure item.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Section 11 is the library services. Again, this Fontaine basement renovations at the library of $215,000. That was a presentation that came from the CEO of the library. We've had discussions. There is an understanding, they do understand the process as well, that this cannot go forward until a grant approval is known by council, and council can make that decision. If there is no grant funding from the Trillium, I believe they applied to, then we would have to consider funding this project from town reserve resources. So it's been earmarked and will have to be red circled as 0117 library. And their other project is their their regular capital replacement of computers and so forth in their department.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Rivak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'd be useful to know, I think, at some point, not necessarily right now, what the cost of the next best solution to the library services would be. If it's not 215 into the basement, then what's the alternative to achieve the service that the library wants to achieve? So I don't know what that is, but it would be useful to know that in order to understand whether the 215 is a good deal or not a good deal.
Thank you. The CAO wants to address that. Mr. CAO?
Thank you. This comes out of the library needs assessment that was done a few years ago. So the question before the consultant was, do we consider to build a new library facility in the new community center? And that was ruled out as an option. So to get another 10 to 15 years of usable life out of the Fonthill branch, the recommendation was that you need to renovate the basement in order to move staff and office space, et cetera, downstairs. In order to do that, you had to put the proper AODA system in, which is an elevator in this case. So that's the reason for it. It was to extend the life of the existing library. And so the alternative is we don't do it, and then we have to build a new library branch because we've outgrown it.
Thank you. So this does include the elevator?
Yes, it does.
Oh, I thought I saw it in facilities.
It is earmarked in facilities as well as an item.
Yeah, but like in 2023. So why is it in 2023?
Until the grant award is known, we've left it in, the facilities department would have to pay for that. So until the grant is known, and then we can pull that forward if council decides to move forward without the grant award. That's something that council will have to consider at that time. So if another report will be coming back once we know the award of the grant.
Okay, thank you. So just for clarity, the 215 here, does it include, because in facilities, it's 165 for an elevator. Does that 215 include the elevator?
It doesn't include the 165 component that's in ours. Ours includes an elevator plus a whole bunch of other AODA requirements. So this one, as my understanding from the CEO, does include a hydraulic elevator.
It does. Okay.
Does, because I asked that question.
Okay, great. And we're going to red circle that one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to run through
Oh,
number
and-
12?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Section 12 is the reserves, and the reserves as discretionary and non-discretionary. And just as a reminder, discretionary reserves are those that council can choose to fund different projects, can eliminate the reserves. Non-discretionary are those funds like the water, wastewater, parkland dedication, deferred revenue, DC for reserves that we can't, we don't have any legislative allowance to dismiss those or use them for other funding mechanisms. The reserve fund balances at 2017 have a positive balance of just over 2.3 million. However, the 5-year discretionary reserve balance forecast is just over 460,000, which is down from last year's projection. And again, as we discussed earlier in this presentation, it's just an estimate this time. We have not had the audited balances yet or the actual cost of all the projects. So the 5-year, in the development charges continuity schedule, which is the, it's schedule 12.3, I believe, if I can see my glass, 12.2 at the back of your budget binders. I've provided a schedule of continuity for council to see. We have updated the 2016 numbers to the, I know, I apologize for that. We tried to get it as big as possible.
We can make it smaller next time.
Yeah, next time I'll make it smaller. We've updated the balance at 2016 December
No, make it
based on what
bigger,
we
they
know
will.
now, which is just over 2.3 million. And then we projected some significant growth again in 2017, but then we've taken our estimates right back down so that we were being conservative to the year end. We've also implemented the principal and interest payments for the community center within this 5-year schedule to show that we can completely afford to pay for that debt through here.
It's 12.2.
Okay.
So again, the budget obviously is staying focused on the town's strategic plan, and we're ensuring that debt instruments are within legislative levels. We're allowing for adequate cash flow throughout the year. We're focusing on critical infrastructure and projects that drive economic development, and we also, again, aligning it with the East Fontaine lands and the Pelham Community Center. So I am requesting that council approve the 2017 portion of the capital budget, given the portion to be red circled, and receive for information the balance of the 20-year projected budget. And on behalf of senior staff, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the reserve balance pages? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Firstly, I'm trying to understand the DC chart.
Okay.
That's, again, I'm not picking on Public Works, but the DCs are very large in Public Works. In the breakout, within the binder, when I look at, for example, I'm gonna find it here now. I forget what it was. Something like $1,800,000 and some odd thousand were attributed to DCs. Yeah, $1,836,680 for DCs. When I look under Public Works, with respect to DCs, I see $816,400.
That's correct. That is the debenture for the community center from the DC component that we're estimating for 2017, which is just over 500,000. And then anything else that was already previously debentured, as you know, we've debentured most of our DC components to project. Those are added and pieced on top of that. So we've taken that $1,896,000. We said, how much is this costing per $1 of debt? And we've estimated what the debt forecast would be. So that's what you'll see there.
Yeah, that was the point I was trying to find out.
You won't find the numbers exactly in here from what's on those sheets at the top where it says development charges, because we're assuming that we need to debenture them because we need to make sure that the fund holds
Yeah,
itself.
that makes it clear that the money up front. So this is the capital expenditure, the principal, if you will, and these are the debt servicing
That's correct.
components.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, if I can move on to another thing, is I'm wondering whether or not many organizations, and for that matter municipalities, when I've looked online to see what other circumstances are, manage their reserves by way of mandating that the reserve must be a component or a percentage of the capital projects that are undertaken in any one given year. So, for example, if you spending $8 million, your reserve cannot be any less. If it's mandated that it be 10%, then your reserve cannot be any less than 10%. So that you're always holding in reserve a fallback should something go off the rails. Whereas if we look at some of the reserves that we have here, we're operating in fact in deficits over the next 5 years. So I just wondered whether or not we need to give, and I don't know that we'll come to an answer today on this, but the treasurer may have an opinion on it, whether or not we should look at developing a reserve management policy whereby we mandate, and it in some ways might help staff in terms of doing their budgeting in the future, where we mandate that there is a percentage mandated to reserve. And that they, when they look at the spending that they have, are bringing forward, if the reserve falls below that, then they would have to bring a special report to show why and under what circumstances it's emergency, it's a this or it's a that. And we would then vote on that, allowing the reserve to fall below that, what we regard as a safety level, whether it's 8%. Some organizations actually mandate 25% of their capital spending, which is pretty onerous for a municipality. But I think reasonable, some of them that I've looked at are 8% or 10%. And it means that your reserves never go into a deficit position unless there's an absolute calamity within the municipality. So I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues have to say about that and what our treasurer might have to say and whether it's something that's worth looking at.
For me?
Do you want to start? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the things I brought up at the budget impact meeting about having some direction with the reserves. It certainly would drive the budget process a little bit with respect to that. So some of the issue becomes is that if our discretionary reserves don't have a healthy balance, then we're borrowing from non-discretionary. So then we have to pay them interest. So it's, it causes additional work, and also then that interest is coming from where? It's coming from our operating interest within the town's operating budget. So those are all the things that I look at. Also, when we're budgeting for deficits, then we're not budgeting for the fact that something could come up as an emergency that needs to be covered off from that reserve. So it just creates that little bit of unknown as well, that we might even drive that reserve further into deficit if some projects come up throughout the year that are outside of budget process. So I can, for council's consideration, I could go out and look at what other municipalities are doing and bring back a report, and then council can make a decision from that report. I don't think, a decision can be made at this point in time, but I could certainly do the research to come back with something to council.
Thank you. Councillor Kersey and then Councillor Rybak.
I think that would be most useful, and it would, even if it doesn't drive this year's budget, it would help in the planning context for future budgets.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rybak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the director anticipated my question, which was, can we have a report of best practices elsewhere, and what the desirability here is for that kind of reserve management philosophy, so that we could look at in the PNP sometime over the coming months, rather than kill it here.
Exactly.
Can we add that to your list of things?
Yes.
Thank you. I think the discussion about reserves is an interesting one. So there's that approach where you kind of set an arbitrary number. Then there's another approach where you say you don't want to have any more in the not a nickel more in the reserves than you need, because it's really the public's money. So one should plan accordingly. And if something comes up, I think of one of the times where we really dipped into the reserves, and that was regarding the playgrounds. I'm pointing to Ms. Van Ravensway, because there was the 2/3 funding, and we knew, and the council of the day made that decision and said, okay, we're going to go into some deficits into the reserves because there's 2/3 funding for these things, and we already have a plan for 20 years to replace all these. Not really a plan, because it was every 2 years. And they needed it immediately. So we made that decision. So a policy in that case would have said, no, you can't do that. So I think there are schools of thoughts, and there's probably some best practices that we can garner out of that. So if we can maybe take that as direction to the treasurer to come back at a future PNP meeting about that. Anything further? Councillor Papp?
I couldn't agree more, and I would suggest once we've completed this budget process, I am aware also of municipalities that have practices that are opposite, where they do use reserve percentages, and others where they go and they develop it based on a certain dollar amount. So that would be very helpful, I think, especially now that we're into some major development and extending ourselves out. We need to know, and our general public will want to understand that as well. You, Mr. Mayor, you recall that some of the regions, the regional governments, put special levies on, and we've done as a way of doing that. It's one, so I'm not going to belabor that. I look forward that when you got the time to do that, I think it'll be very apropos for us to look at something like that.
Okay, thank you. You've been assisting us along the way and keeping track. May I have a, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so Councillor King, you're the gatekeeper on this one. You sign your name to it. So here's what Councillor King's proposing, if this is okay.
There you go.
That the 2017 capital budget presentation be received, and actually, I hope that you can provide that to the clerk and can be included in the minutes. I noticed some of the members of the media were back there scribbling feverishly on that, so we want to make sure we can get that to them. And that the Committee of the Whole recommended Council approve the 2017 portion of the capital budget and receive the balance of the 20-year projected capital budget for information, and that any red circle items be given separate consideration by committee as they be brought forward individually as follows. Okay, here we go. So under facilities, project 101, which is the Marlene Stewart Street Park Pool Mechanical Repairs and Deck, and facilities 08, which is the Tice Road Operations Center and Repairs. Under roads, the Road 09, Design and Construction Water Main Replacement Station Street from Pelham Town Square to Port Robinson Road. And then 3 vehicles, Vehicle 01, which is the combination snowplow and spreader unit, 04, which is the GPS tracking unit for the snowplow fleet, and Vehicle 10, which is the small SUV for the building department. And we're going to look at whether we need another one or not in a lease. Other red circle items continued wastewater, and some of these are kind of following out of the roads. So wastewater 01, which is the Station Street, and wastewater 06, which is the Hurricane Road Sewer Lateral Replacement, Design and Construction, and that's from funding from the province. And water 04, which is the design and construction of the water main replacement for Station Street, and then water 07, which is the design and construction for Hurricane. And then finally, the library 01, which is the Fawn Hill Library basement renovations. Thank you, Councillor King.
My absolute pleasure.
Any other comments to that? Are we ready for calling the question? I'm going to call the question. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for assisting. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And now, is this the next one here?
Yes.
Oh, it's the adjourning. And the clerk was quite anxious to say, yes, that's the one. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin that this special meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, December 19th, 2016. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate all your work on the capital budget and planning. We'll see you next time. Thank you.